visitors. Okay, members, you're very welcome to this meeting of the Education Committee. Can I ask Assembly Broadcasting to add all members into the spotlight for the next 4 items? Clerk, are we okay to proceed with this business in advance of the briefing? Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, can I ask members if they're aware of any apologies?
Robin Newton.
Thank you. Okay, members, in terms of chairperson's business, I would advise members that the devolved government in Wales has decided to cancel all GCSE, AS and A-level end-of-year examinations in 2021, owing to varying levels of interruption and disruption to education in that jurisdiction. It appears that end-of-year exams will be replaced by controlled class assessment tasks set by the examining body, which will be marked externally. Can I seek members' agreement to write to the Department of Education and SEA, again seeking clarity on contingency arrangements for GCSEs, AS and A-level examinations in Northern Ireland for 2021, including the use of moderated controlled assessments and an update on discussions with examination regulatory bodies across the UK? Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, members, can I also advise that the Department of Education has provided the committee with a copy of the draft terms of reference for the New Decade New Approach Independent Review of Education. In response to the committee's request, the Department has asked for the committee's views on the draft terms of reference for the review. Can I seek members' agreement that we consider the draft terms of reference and agree a committee position at next week's meeting? Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Can I also remind members then that in order to inform scrutiny of the special school area planning process, 7 members of the committee met informally with Belfast Special School principals on Tuesday the 3rd of November 2020. A note of the informal meeting has been circulated, including potential concerns about which members may wish to put questions to the Education Authority and Department later today. Can I seek members' agreement to invite special schools representatives to brief the committee in formal session at the end of the special school area planning consultation on the 13th of January 21, and in order to inform the committee's considered response? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, members, can I advise that in the Department's annual report and accounts for 2019-20, reference was made to the General Teaching Council Northern Ireland being put into special measures. The annual report seemed to imply that GTC-NI may not be able to deregister teachers where there has been serious misconduct and thus prevent them from teaching in schools. This, if true, is obviously concerning. And can I seek members' agreement to write to the Department of Education seeking clarity on the use of special measures at the General Teaching Council and in respect of the position relating to deregistration of teachers? Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, members, can I also advise that the committee was previously given to understand that some educational psychology assessments were continuing despite COVID-19 restrictions, and that workarounds were being employed. However, in Assembly written questions, it has been indicated that 699 psychological assessments by educational psychologists have been paused, and 1,842 children are awaiting assessment. The number of paused assessment and the length of that waiting list are, if accurate, obviously very concerning. And can I seek members' agreement to write to the Education Authority seeking clarity on the educational psychology assessments and confirmation on the number of assessments that have actually been completed since lockdown began in March 2020. Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Can I refer members to draft minutes of the committee meeting of 4th of November 2020 at page 6 of their meeting packs and seek members' agreement that the minutes are a complete and accurate record of proceedings? Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Advise members that there are no matters arising. Members content to proceed?
Content.
Okay. Thank you. Then agenda item 5, members, is our forward work programme. Can I remind members that they received some evidence in October from the National Autistic Society, Evangelical Alliance, Children's Law Centre on the impact of the suspension of SEND services on parents and children. The committee has also received a number of reports and surveys on this important matter. Can I refer members to a cover note from the committee clerk at page 15 in respect of a proposed committee stakeholder event on the impact of lockdown on the provision of SEND services? A draft invitation is also included, and suggest to members that this event, along with next week's briefing on the cross-sectoral COVID support package for vulnerable children, might inform our understanding of these matters and lead to a related committee motion. Can I seek members' agreement to organise a stakeholder event on Thursday, the 3rd of December 2020 at 6 to 8 p.m. via Zoom, and invite the organisations named in the covering note? Open to other suggestions of organisations as well. Members agreed?
Agreed.
Want suggestions now? Just one. Just
looking forward to those to the clerk. Yeah.
Forward to clerk. Okay.
Okay. Members agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Can I refer members to the draft forward work programme on page 19 and seek members' agreement with the revised forward work programme? Do you need to speak to that in any way, Clerk? No?
Don't think so. I think we covered a lot of this very quickly last week. So
okay. Members content with the forward work programme for now? Agreed?
Content.
Agreed. Thank you. Okay, members then. Agenda item 6 is the IFA GAA Ulster Rugby Sport and Physical Activity in the Curriculum oral briefing. Can I ask Assembly Broadcasting to remove all of the members from the spotlight and add to the witnesses? Can I refer members to a cover memo from the committee clerk at page 24, a briefing note from the IFA and GAA on recent research into the current sports programme and the impact on pupil wellbeing at page 28, an Assembly research paper on physical activity and wellbeing at page 45, a briefing paper from Ulster Rugby in table papers, and can I, for the avoidance of doubt, Clerk, it might be best I declare an interest as a registered coach with the IFA, just in case, purely voluntary, as Michael will know.
I didn't want to wait till the result tomorrow night before I heard that one.
Yeah. Members can discuss the quality of my coaching or otherwise, but yeah, register that interest just in case, Clerk. And can I welcome the following witnesses: Michael Boyd, the Director of the Irish Football Association; Claire Ray, School Sports Coordinator with the Irish Football Association; Dr Eugene Young, Director of Coaching and Games Development with the Ulster Gaelic Athletic Association; Michael Glover, Key Stage 2 Project Coordinator, Ulster Gaelic Athletic Association; Callum Irving, Researcher, Physical Intelligence; Chris Webster, Head of Rugby Development, Ulster Rugby. And by way of welcome, can I say that during lockdown we have all come to realise even more so the importance of school, not just as a place where formal learning happens, but also as a place where crucial learning and support about emotional health and well-being and physical health and well-being also takes place. Physical activity, sport and physical education play a key role in all of this, and the committee is therefore delighted to welcome representatives from the IFA, GAA and Ulster Rugby to talk about these important matters today. Can I advise the witnesses that the committee will give them approximately 15 minutes in total to make an opening statement and to address the above issues, and this will be followed by questions from the members. Over to you then, witnesses, and I think we're going with Chris first, then Michael, then Eugene. Is that okay? Yep. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I'd just like to thank the committee for the opportunity to be here today and to speak to you. It's great to have this opportunity to put across our thoughts and ideas around the importance of sport within school. In terms of the paper that was submitted in advance of the meeting, just given an outline in terms of the background currently of the work that we as an organisation do within schools, and school sport and the delivery of rugby activity within schools is a significant aspect of the work of Ulster Rugby. And this encapsulates the full spectrum of participation, from the introduction of the game to someone who has no prior knowledge or experience of rugby, through to supporting pupils who have an aspiration to compete at international level or pursue a professional career in the sport. In terms of last year, from September 2019 until the beginning of the current COVID crisis, Ulster Rugby development staff We're engaged in delivering rugby-related programmes within schools, and these programmes were delivered both within a primary school and a secondary school setting across the spectrum of schools that we have. A total of over 20,000 pupils, both male and female, were engaged across primary and secondary settings. So in primary schools, we have 5,500 males, 4,500 females, and within secondary schools, 6,600 males and 3,800 females. In terms of our engagement with pupils, the majority of our work centred around the delivery of rugby-specific physical activity programmes. However, other activities included a focus on areas including mentoring, leadership, school twinning projects and community relations. And this involved a combination of delivering activities within schools and also utilising Kingspan Stadium as a venue. Ulster Rugby also provides support to pupils in school aged between 15 and 18 who are part of our player pathway and have been identified as having potential for future inclusion within the Ulster Academy. Ulster Rugby also provided support directly to schools through the provision of coach education and development opportunities for teachers and coaching staff. And this included working with Stranmillis College to provide support and qualifications to primary school teachers and teachers in training. And out of that, we have 56 teachers and school coaching staff who undertook formal rugby coaching qualifications and 166 teachers and school coaching staff who engaged in rugby-specific CPD opportunities throughout the year. In terms of the current challenges within schools from an Ulster Rugby perspective, I'd just like to draw the members' attention to the following points. So, financial challenges for schools is first and foremost. And given the financial challenges to schools, many have had to reduce their expenditure on sport and other extracurricular provision. This has had significant implications on the ability of some schools to maintain appropriate levels of equipment, facilities and staffing in order to satisfy demand for participation. This can lead to increased demands on the governing body to provide additional support. There's also the cost of participation in sport, especially travel to and from fixtures and events, cost of substitute cover for teachers supporting events and increased transport costs means that on occasion schools aren't able to participate in activities which happen away from the school premises. In terms of facilities, there is a requirement for the upgrade of facilities in some schools to improve the quality of experience for participants and thus assist in maintaining high levels of participation. Examples could include improving grass pitches to support volume activity over the winter, access to 3G and 4G surfaces, provision of floodlights, improved changing facilities and access to appropriate gym, strength and conditioning facilities. In terms of coaching, educational evidence strongly suggests that the deployment of appropriately qualified and engaging coaches has a very strong influence on participation and subsequent involvement in the sport. Having the appropriate number of teaching and coaching staff with the ability and experience to deliver age-appropriate rugby game-based physical activities is proving challenging in many schools due to increased demands in other areas as an overall reduction in the teaching complement in many schools. Current members of PE staff report difficulties in being able to support the numbers of participants and teams that they would like to run within schools, and this can be a limiting factor in providing opportunities to play for those pupils that want to. A number of participation opportunities that we deliver within schools can only be delivered as a result of funding that is received from other bodies. Currently, we receive funding through the Sport Northern Ireland-led Everybody Active 2020 programme, and this programme will come to an end in March 2021, resulting in a number of rugby development staff having contracts terminated. Due to the focus of the programme on improving participation opportunities for underrepresented groups, this loss will particularly impact on levels of participation within disability and female participants. Ulster Rugby is involved in a number of programmes with schools which go way beyond physical activity alone. These programmes are due to end over the course of the next 12 months. Department for Communities will end in March 2021 and our Peace 4 programme in December 2021. And both of these programmes which are funded are delivered in partnership with the IFA and the GAA. Discontinuation of these programmes will result in loss of staff resource to deliver mentoring, wellbeing, youth leadership and schools twinning programmes. Drop-off in participation rates in sport, including rugby from age 16 onwards, is a societal concern. Whilst this is something that we're actively looking at through a transition working group, it does need further intervention to ensure that pupils continue to participate as they transition out of secondary education. And then finally, moving on to the opportunities for sport within schools from an Ulster Rugby perspective. So, A couple of key points from myself. The first is the development of better understanding how we as a governing body, and other governing bodies for that matter, can support the needs of the education sector, especially if there is the opportunity to address common themes which are appropriate across a number of sports. The opportunity to create framework that might allow community access to school sports facilities outside of school hours, and equally provide school access to club facilities if appropriate. This would allow us to build on the existing cross-departmental Your School, Your Club programme. Not only could this improve school facilities, but also have the added benefit of shared access for clubs. Opportunities at community level and equally in small schools can, at times, be hindered by the lack of access to appropriate facilities. Increasing the awareness of the community, and young people in particular, that there are many different versions of rugby, including contact and non-contact types of game, that will permit participation in formats that participants are comfortable with, and this includes touch rugby, tag rugby and cross-field sevens. There's also an opportunity to promote non-playing rugby activities, including refereeing and coaching to pupils as well. It is evident that there is potential for continued growth in the number of girls playing rugby in schools. We're currently investigating, as part of our Women in Rugby Action Plan, how we can best support girls rugby by providing teachers and coaches with the skills and confidence to be able to support this growth beyond the provision delivered by Ulster Rugby staff. Educational research strongly indicates that engagement with physical activity supports academic and personal development of young people. By having further opportunity to collaborate with relevant partners in the areas of multi-sport and multi-agency approach across cross-curricular themes, including physical...
Chris, I'm going to need you to bring your remarks to a close.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just the opportunity to provide physical literacy, numeracy, mental health and well-being, community relations and peace building, we can use sport as a gateway to help pupils participate in topics that they may otherwise choose not to engage with. And I think the final point that I leave on, and I think it leads into Michael and Eugene, is the opportunity to develop an early years programme targeting Key Stage 1 and 2 pupils, which promotes physical literacy and fundamental movement skills. This will benefit all sports and develop confidence in pupils when it comes to promoting lifelong involvement in sport and physical activity.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks very much. Michael?
Okay, thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Sorry, when we second, Michael, apologies. Could I ask everyone that isn't speaking to make sure that they've muted their devices to avoid background noise? Hand over to you, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. I'll briefly describe the partnership and then hand over to Dr. Eugene Young. Together, the IFA and Ulster GAA have 14 years of partnership working with Denny in schools. The programme receives positive feedback from teachers, from pupils, parents, and in 2014 received the UK Sports Coach Award for Coaching Intervention of the Year. In an exit survey for children in 2018, over 70% reported that the programme made them feel happy. 89% played a sport or engaged in physical activity outside of school across a range of 14 different activities. The programme is really working well. The promotion of good relations is central to our partnership. We delivered a Shared Future, Shared Goals programme with support from the Education Authority to 24 schools, 12 partnerships. This project was evaluated and it was a huge success. Moving forward, we'd like to see that happening again. We make an impact all across Northern Ireland. At our height in the partnership, we reached a third of all the school children, and today around 280 schools. Research highlights the value of the programme. 90% of the teachers are satisfied or very satisfied with what we deliver. The pandemic research makes the work even more important. The sports invest in and deliver their own programmes as well, all across the country, engage in the community, schools and clubs, developing sports for all, health and well-being. It's important to note each sport has plans and strategies in place for schools, and we also have joint multi-sport programmes, which are worth noting at this point. Department for Communities, Sport, a Home for Lifelong Volunteering, is a brilliant multi-sport programme that goes right across Northern Ireland, developing young volunteers who can be embedded in sports clubs and in the community. Peace 4, Sport Uniting Communities, a good relations and capacity building programme, has made a dramatic impact in the border counties and in Northern Ireland. We have just initiated a new Fresh Start programme with support from DOJ and Department for Communities, a new multi-sports crime prevention programme which shows the power of the sports coming together as well. We're currently working with other sports and DFC to develop a joint mental health programme via the Coping with COVID programme as well. So lots is happening between the sports, and multi-sports are making a difference. Together we make a massive contribution, have massive reach. We deliver a world-class service. We need more support to do more in the schools. We need longer term funding cycles. Our partnership is strong and our coaches are experts in delivering PE and fundamental movement skills in primary schools. This month, on the 4th of November, the Ulster GAA and the IFA submitted a 3-year funding proposal to the Education Minister. We were asking for $2.5 million over the next 3 years to deliver a world-class primary schools programme. And we would ask the Education Committee to write to the Minister following our presentation today to come in behind us to support our proposal and support all the children in primary school across Northern Ireland. I'll now hand over to Dr. Eugene Young to present for both our organisations, the Irish FA Foundation and Ulster GAA.
Thank you.
Okay, first of all, thanks again for the opportunity to come in to meet the committee. It's a great opportunity for us. Today's session really was to focus on the role of physical activity in sport in schools, and in particular the curriculum sports programme in providing good mental health and emotional well-being. I think from the onset it's very important to say that we are not the experts in mental health, excuse me, and any training or promotions that we do is in partnership with a third party. But we would say that our staff are all trained up to deliver key aspects of this. What we do believe in is the power of sport and physical activity in developing social and interpersonal skills, teamwork, respect, self-esteem and communication and life skills. We do believe that our work impacts not only on the physical well-being of individuals, but also on the social and psychological factors that contribute to both positive physical and emotional wellness. I suppose the challenge we have in all programmes is to measure impact. We are not an academic organisation, but we do recognise the importance of measuring wellness and charting emotional and behavioural impact of programmes. This is something that presents a challenge and requires the external support. When we set out on this journey in 2007, we didn't think that in 2020 we'd still be working in partnership with the department. I think this shows the commitment of everyone to what we see as a very important area of work. When it comes to mental health, we have always partnered with a third party. This has allowed us to develop the coaches' knowledge and experience. All of our coaches are fully conversant with the benefits of physical activity, what their role is, and the age-appropriate activities that they can use. Sport also allows us to take messages we learn and bring them back into the classroom. Engagement and delivery of messages is something that we work at consistently across the association. A good example of this is the concussion awareness programme launched by the department, and we contributed by working with the department to deliver this key message both into our schools and into our communities. Key to our progress and the success of this partnership has been our ability to work together and use research and insights to inform our way forward. One of the first independent reports produced on our joint programme was by the Education and Training Inspectorate in 2010. It highlighted the high level of engagement by the children and the excellent use of the programme to build teacher confidence. It reflected on the programme's ability to be inclusive and to build relationships. From then, the IFA and Ulster GAA have been involved in their own internal research and insights. Many of the insights into our programme can be found in our annual reports returned to the department. From the onset in 2008, we were carrying out impact studies pre and post the programme delivery. We focused not only on pupil impact, but also on the impact on the teachers. Annual reviews encouraged reflective practice and took into consideration the feedback from the principals, the teachers, the pupils and the parents. There were many qualitative statements collated from the stakeholders that highlighted the impacts on confidence, self-esteem and motivation. When the programme was wrapping up in 2018, we completed an exit survey of primary 7 children. Over 2,000 children responded, and we asked them to reflect on their experience. Children reported that the programme made them feel happy, excited, and they felt included and found the programme fun and enjoyable. I think more important is that children continued to engage in physical activity across a diverse range of activities, with many using their own local leisure facilities and clubs. I suppose just to finish off, recent research from the University of Exeter in 2020, Be Active, Be Happy, concluded from a survey of 6,000 children across 21 schools that less active children are less happy children. Dublin City University, also in 2020, completed a research study on physical activity and mental wellness. This is the first time these two have been connected. Again, the survey included over 5,500 children across 79 schools. The conclusion was that those engaged in sport and higher levels of well-being show higher levels of well-being and lower symptoms of anxiety and depression. Finally, a report just produced in Northern Ireland here, the Youth Wellbeing NI, commissioned research from QUB, UU and the Health HSC, and it reported that 1 in 8 children had an emotional disorder such as anxiety and depression. So this is something I think we have to keep foremost in our thoughts. As a partnership, we want to encourage physical activity, physical education and sport in and out of school. We want our policy makers to examine the research thoroughly to inform their actions and their decisions. We want school leaders to engage and shift priorities to ensure delivery of programmes. We want individuals and families to change behaviours, and we think our programmes can actually influence those. We want our governing bodies to sustain the resource that they provide to support these programmes. Finally, we want meaningful cross-departmental funding in government for projects that impact on physical and emotional health of the children and youth, and also improve the environments for children and youth to flourish. As a teacher reported in one statement from the research on the programme, the children returned to the classroom healthy and happy and ready for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to every governing body represented here today for your presentation, but also for the outstanding work that you do in our community across a wide range of issues. I am passionate about the power of sport to improve the lives of children and young people and to improve our entire community. So it's extremely encouraging to see the work of every code and the partnership working that has been going on for many, many years now, often under the radar. We probably don't do enough to celebrate and recognise the impact of this work, so I'm delighted that we're able to platform it today. As setting the stall out early, Clark, I think the Education Committee should support the proposal that is being made to the Department of Education by the IFA and GAA in relation to a successor to the Curriculum Sports Programme. I think Justin McNulty and I were part of a cross-party delegation that supported the extension of the previous Curriculum Sports Programme, and indeed I think the previous Education Committee added support to that work as well. So we can consider that, Clark, after today's briefing in terms of making that a formal proposal to the Department of Education. Witnesses, the Northern Ireland Assembly voted in favour of, albeit my amendment, to call on the Minister for Education to improve the monitoring and reporting of physical education hours per week accessed by primary pupils, and to issue a public consultation on the introduction of a statutory obligation on schools to facilitate an appropriate minimum amount of physical education hours per week for primary schools. It does seem from evidence that the data suggests that still far too few pupils are accessing that recommended amount of physical education per week, and it's clear that the findings are that the work of your programmes are significantly enhancing the amount of hours and the quality of those hours that they access. I know you've referenced some of it already, but what is the type of feedback that you get from primary school teachers with regards to the key help some of these programmes are to assisting them to make sure that those recommended hours and that quality fundamental movement physical literacy education is being received in their schools?
I might at this point, are we able to bring in
sure,
Michael and Claire, because they oversee the coaches that are in the schools and they might be better placed to answer that?
Yeah, that'd be great. Mike, Claire?
Mr. Chairman, Michael Glover here from Ulster GAA. Probably one of the things we done at the start of this year was we asked our staff to, on a regular basis, speak to their teachers and see how they found the programme going. So it was an anecdotal thing, and they were taking significant statements back. And one of the surveys we done showed that 93% of the teachers say that after returning to the class from lessons, children were far more settled, they were much better behaved, had better listening skills. There was greater participation in question and answering sessions, improved focus on their tasks, more good work was being completed, they were more engaged, they were settled, and there was fewer instances of restless, fidgety behaviours. So from an anecdotal point of view and from that survey, it showed that whenever we were doing in our 35 to 45 minute lessons, something was happening. So it is, and that's across 93% of the schools at the minute. Ourselves in the IFA are working in 105 schools, delivering over 500 PE lessons a week to nearly 12,000 children. So that's a significant piece of information that's being relayed back to us, and this information is relayed back to us at the end of every term. At the start of the new programme in September 2019, we asked both our sets of staff, 24 staff, and they kept a reflective diary. And what they done was they were looking for coachable moments and significant statements. So coachable moments being whenever somebody is struggling during a session, or when somebody is performing, well during a session, that the coach steps in and they develop that piece of, session in terms of respect and help and how the children are reacting, and also significant statements where the staff were recording what teachers were saying to them after lessons, what pupils were saying to them after lessons, and that could have been anything. And one of the big ones that jumped out at us, and it was a very simple statement in the middle of one of the programmes last October, was one of our coaches in Fermanagh, a young girl came there after the session and says, "Emer, we hope you're back next week, because if you don't come back, we're not going to get any PE." So I think that's a very, very stark and very, very significant statement in terms of the programme we offer. And moving forward, I think it's really, really important that this is embedded. I suppose from our perspective, it's plugging a small gap. If you take the last survey, there was around 184,000 primary school children in Northern Ireland. We're hitting around 12,000, 13,000 children a week. So cumulatively over a 10-week period, it's 120,000 children are getting PE. We're plugging a small gap. But if that disappears, the implications are massive. They're massive.
Yep.
Children moving through school life are going to lose the development of social skills, teamwork, etc., etc. So this is really, really important that we move that forward.
Thanks, Michael. Claire, do you want to respond as well?
Yeah, so just last week, I was part of the All-Ireland Physical Literacy Forum, and it identified several key themes that children are now expressing in terms of their physical literacy and PE. And one of them is, knowledge and understanding, that they understand the consequences of physical activity. And what is fed back by the teachers in our programme is that we supplement the physical activity lessons with information around healthy eating, around a positive, healthy lifestyle. And so their children are also understanding the why behind what they're doing also. Fun and engagement is key for children. And again, that's an environment that our coaches are really passionate about providing. And that leads significantly to social interaction with their peers and that peer support, which is key in their motivation for staying physically active for long term. Our coaches are particularly skilled at providing variety, choice, and making it personally relevant. So it's a wide range of activities, so there's something for everybody. And again, that's identified by the teachers, that there's a real broad scope of activity, and that therefore the sessions are very inclusive. Another key point would be that it's appropriately challenged, the activities are appropriately challenging, and that effort is rewarded. So it's not just about elite pathways and working with the best players, that everyone is challenged to be better than what they were yesterday, last week, and they have those personal goals and therefore a sense of achievement and joy in what they're doing. And that we also try to address any kind of negative barriers with in our sessions too. So if there is negative or social support there, we link that in weeks of such as Anti-Bullying Week next week, and we talk about the importance of being a good friend, being a good teammate, how you can provide more support, and that in itself as well creates a more positive environment where confidence can then be increased.
Claire, can I use that as a point just to ask one final supplementary question then as well? That I noted in the baseline findings quite starkly and concerningly that 26% of girls, only 26% of girls looked forward to physical activity each day, and that was the baseline finding at the start, and that in terms of the key factors in what physical activity means to me, it was stated the girls responding cited weight and getting skinny, which I think is a really startling insight into the pressures that apply to young girls in schools. And another finding was that some of the factors around not being involved in regular physical activity was a concern of not being good enough. So are the programmes, you've already said there, in terms of informing and inspiring children about why good nutrition and physical activity is so good for them, from self-esteem, from physical and mental health and well-being, are those concerning baseline findings around girls in particular something that the programmes are responding to, Claire?
Yes, absolutely. So this is actually quite new, I suppose, to us, just with Callum being on board with the research over the last 6 months or so. So that's where we would link within our own governing body to the other programmes that we provide. So within the RSFA, we have our Shooting Stars programme, which is specifically for girls only, and we try and signpost the girls into maybe a girls only environment where it's about fun and friendship, as opposed to maybe those other messages that they're picking up about being skinny and things like that. So it's linking in with our other programmes. We're planning on working with UEFA and Disney next year to provide a girls only breakfast club in our schools too. So it's just providing a more bespoke environment for girls in which they can experience the sort of fun and enjoyment, and where we can then start to filter more of those more positive messages around feeling confident in their body, that it's not about being skinny, that it's about being strong and healthy. So those kind of messages too. Callum, I don't know if there was something you maybe want to add on that?
No, it's a really important point, and it's one where the bit that scared me was the terminology, and the fact that was so easily used. When we've asked the children to fill in the baseline survey, we asked them some quantitative questions, but also at the end we asked them to offer some reflection, draw some pictures, and say, the words that being physically active means to them. And it was very concerning that the word skinny, just as terminology was being used, there was also stuff on the boys' side about, boys drawing big muscly men as this is the social norm. So there is some body dysmorphia issues coming into it. What I'd say on the programme, which I think is an important point, when we spoke to the teachers, and ironically, we probably got a bit more time with the teachers because of the lockdown, so we were able to go into a bit more depth. One of the lots of the anecdotal quotes that we've recorded were around this programme particularly engages those who don't normally engage in PE, or it's particularly engaging for the girls. Attendance is higher on the day the coach is coming in. So when we see that baseline data, although it's concerning, those pupils as of yet haven't been through the programme. So when we go back to that same cohort to look at the same group of people again and see what they fill in, that's where we'll get to see, it's only a 10-week causation period, but we should get to see if, what the teachers are telling us about that engagement more with the, in inverted commas, non-sporty children actually comes across within the data. But it's a really important point. I'm glad you've raised it, Chairperson.
Yeah, I'll move on here, but yeah, just to conclude on that point, I think it's massively important that these programmes and that physical education in our schools promote positive understandings of physical health and participation in physical activity. I coached the brother of the star of your Shooting Stars campaign, by the way, so I'm superbly biased in relation to that. But I bring in Deputy Chairperson Karen Mullen, MLA.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everybody for attending this morning. Apologies, I just have to pop out after this. I also want to thank you all and all the coaches on the hard work that you do. I'm very passionate about sport and healthy lifestyles programmes in schools. I worked in a healthy living centre for many years and delivered many healthy programmes and physical activities into my local schools. I know a lot about the sports curriculum programme and about the work of your organisation, so it's great to hear particularly the research and what you are building upon. because when I did, I suppose, did that work, the programmes didn't just include football, rugby and GAA, but also dance, judo, yoga, etc. You know, because it was about trying to get as many children involved and participating. It is vital that a varied programme is offered to ensure that all children are able to take part in physical activity and an activity that they enjoy. So the department needs to go further, and it needs to broaden out the sports curriculum programme, in my view, and it needs to be funded. So I would support that call as well. The coaches from all your organisations are excellent, and I used to see just the delight in the children's faces and how much they look forward to them coming in every week. And I've seen the benefits as well, wider than the physical activity. And Claire spoke there, and Callum, you know, when you look at the fun, the mental health, the confidence that it builds in young people, the resilience also, and then also being part of a team, and also we would have tied it in as used to with the wider curriculum. So there's many varied benefits. Chris, I'm really glad that when you give your presentation, you touched on the challenges over and above that's outside of your control and outside of the school's control. You talked about funding, but you also talked about the facilities within schools and the inequity that is across our schools. I'm thinking particular in one school in my area, St Joseph's Boys School. It's the only boys, all boys non-selection school that we have, and their facilities is awful, and we can't get the department or EA to step in to properly fund them, and it's just not acceptable. So we need to see that happen, as well as being invested in the programmes that you talked about today. So I suppose I didn't really have a question, but I just wanted to say that to you. It's great to see you coming here today, and I suppose look forward to doing a wee bit more with these and working with the Department and the Education Authority to broaden out and ensure that these programmes not only continue, but as I say that, oh sorry, I actually do. I'm all over the place here because I have to go to another meeting. I just wanted to go back in relation to the programme that's currently going on at the minute. Michael, I see in the presentation that there's 288 schools that's benefiting. I know more schools in my area and Derry would like to be able to benefit, and you talked about the proposal for the schools programme for the next 2 years. Would that ensure that more schools were able to avail of the programmes that you currently offer?
Yes, thanks for the question. Yeah, through our new proposal, we want to do more work around building capacity with the schools and mentoring the schools and building up the capacity of the teachers and the volunteers connected to the schools. So part of our proposal would enable us to reach more schools and to reach more school children. But obviously we need greater investment in that. I'll maybe ask Eugene to ask it.
I suppose one of the challenges, Karen, was during COVID to reduce the risks as much as possible. So we actually were in probably double the number of schools to what we currently are. So we took a decision that the coach would be in one school for the day, just to ensure there's to decrease the risk basically of transfer. So obviously we did operate at one stage with over 30 coaches. That's been significantly reduced. So our spread, as Michael Glover has said, is a lot less than what it was. But I think given the current situation, we're happy just to have one school per day, and that actually would reduce the risk of any transfer. But our ideal situation would be to be in every school. But obviously resources for that are just huge. And that's for people in higher positions.
Well, Eugene, I can tell you every school in Derry City and County Derry once she's done, so I get plenty of requests for it. So great work, everybody. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Karen. Can I bring in William Humphrey?
A terrible GAA, but...
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, William, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time and presentation this morning. I think, Chair, before we start, given that and I declare an interest as a member of the Green and White Army. Given that we there's a big game tomorrow night, I think we, as a committee, should join with so many people across Northern Ireland and wishing Stephen Davis and the team all the best for tomorrow night's playoff with Slovakia, because we've heard earlier about community relations and good community relations. And we know that the team qualifying for the Euros will be a huge boost to that next year. So we wish the boys well for tomorrow night. Chair, I listened carefully, and I think someone said, maybe Michael, that this scheme has been going on, this project's been on for 14 years. And I certainly remember when I first arrived at Stormont, getting a presentation such like this at the old DCAL committee. Can I ask those in front of us this morning, are they concerned there's a real threat to the continuation of the project in terms of government funding?
Yeah, it's well, we had a very good meeting with the Education Minister a few weeks ago, and we were reassured, that we're in his thoughts for the next round of funding for the next 12 months. I think where we'd like to get to as a partnership is longer term funding cycles, because for the staff involved, in particular the coaches, to limp on with 12 months funding and then not be sure if you're going to get it and then limp on again is not ideal for morale. So longer term funding commitment to these types of programs is really important for the future if it's possible.
Yeah, I think one of the key challenges for us is the retention of staff. And when you're on a 12-month programme, by month 9, staff are starting to look at the door because there's no commitment beyond the 12 months. And we have found with the department that it has been very much last minute in terms of decisions, and we just feel that that's not appropriate. So we spent considerable time building up expertise within the staff, and then we lose them at short notice. So that is definitely a challenge for us. So as Michael has said, we put a joint proposal together for a 3-year project, and we would hope that the department will look at that favourably.
I have to say, Chair, as someone who for a time worked in the community sector, I absolutely sympathise with the point that's just been made. 1-year contract, really, 6 months into that contract, and staff are understandably looking for other employment because of the pressures that they have at their home. So I fully sympathise with that point. I also picked up that 90% of teachers were satisfied with the project. So can I just ask the witnesses this morning, what would be the impact if the project wasn't there in terms of fitness, discipline, personal development and so on for our young people?
I think maybe if I just come in initially, I think this whole area of work is a specialist area of work, and I always use the example of the school asked me to teach music, I would be looking somewhere else for someone to do it. And I think that physical education, although we're not physical education specialists, we're sports coaches, that this is a specialist area. And I do feel that if this programme wasn't there, that there would be less activity in the schools. Yeah. And I think that's something we're very conscious of. And I know that outside of this programme, that both the 3 bodies that are here provide resources into schools to encourage sports activity, both during curriculum and after schools. So, the programme that we're talking about here is probably part of our delivery, I think, if Michael would maybe agree with me, and Chris, into the schools. So I think it's important that, that this is PE is a specialist area, just like music would be, and that it requires people with specialist knowledge to deliver that.
Yeah, if I could maybe just jump in there on the back of what Eugene said, and obviously, whilst we're not directly involved in the programme in question, we are, as a governing body, delivering sport within primary schools. And I think from our point of view, the overriding message that we look to get across in that work is providing a quality experience for the pupils, so something which they find fun and engaging, which was referenced earlier. Our approach is also to work alongside the teacher in delivery of PE within that curriculum time, because we find that it helps improve the confidence of the teacher themselves, that there is a professional there guiding the session, but we also work very closely with them to make sure that whenever that staff member is no longer available or moves on to deliver in another school, that the teacher feels that they have the confidence to take that activity on. So again, it's not solely reliant on an individual coach coming in all of the time, but we're there to help build the confidence of the teacher as well.
And maybe just to finish on that, there was a survey, Department of Health survey in 2018. 37% of people in Northern Ireland overweight, 27% obese. And when we were putting together our plans for the current programme that we're working on with Denny, there was more girls in schools with type 2 diabetes in Northern Ireland than any other part of the United Kingdom. So what we need really is a considerable uplift in what's going into this area and a considerable investment in what's going on. What we've got at the moment is not satisfying what the children across the country need. And together, a multi-sport approach and the proposal we've put together to the Education Minister is really important. I think that it's supported and that the Education Committee come in behind it.
Do you want me to flip you in, Justin?
Chair, can I just, in relation to, as I mentioned earlier, the presentations we made to the old decal committee, can I ask our witnesses this morning, does the Department of Communities as a successor department of decal provide funding for similar schemes to what we're talking about this morning for the three associations?
Yeah, there's some decal funding, but certainly not for this particular area of work. One of the things that when we met the Minister was the discussion around partnership funding, cross-departmental, and one of the recommendations we have in here is that this particular area of work is cross-departmental, and I know health obviously has its own crisis at the moment around funding and all that's going on there, but certainly a more joined-up approach between communities, health and education certainly I think would add value to this programme and what we're trying to achieve. But at the moment, we are in a position where we have to go knocking the doors, and Michael and myself in particular have spoken about this, and we feel that that is something that should be at governmental level, that departments should be working closer together and delivering on particular outcomes.
Yep.
I think a joined-up approach around those issues is hugely important. I think there's absolutely no doubt about that. In terms of, can I just ask, is this project solely about working in schools? I declare an interest as a member of the Scout Association. Do you work with uniformed organisations as well, or is it no scope to that in terms of the funding constraints you have?
So just on that one, if I can jump in, during the lockdown and the pandemic, the two organisations developed over 50 videos that schools and clubs and volunteers and families could download so that they could exercise at home safely. We also had virtual sports days, and I know from our own analysis in the Irish FA with regards to social media engagement, we know that there was more than 40,000 people, downloaded those videos to make them work at home. So I think what we're doing has a massive impact in the schools and with the young people, but clubs and volunteers and community groups like Scout NI, the BB, the Girls Brigade, they're all benefiting from this as well, because when we put those resources out there, because of the massive reach that the organisations have, lots of those organisations were contacting us and they benefited from those resources as well.
I think just if I could come in quickly, just one of the important things I think is sustainability of activity outside of school. And we're very conscious that we need to deliver a quality service within the schools, but equally we feel that we need to encourage the children to participate outside of school. So linking them into activities outside of the school day I think is very important. And on the exit survey that we did with the P7 children, we asked them what do they get involved in, and the children were involved across about 12 or 13 different sports. And I think that's important. This isn't, I think, the IFA and the GAA going in trying to recruit Gaelic footballers and soccer players or football players. This is about us providing young people with the right physical skills, so that it reminds me of someone who did a project for me one time on rising from the chair. It was a biomechanics project, and it was all about the mechanics of movement. And it's the same principle. The basic skills, physical literacy skills that these young people learn through this particular programme are skills that they can take into any sport or any physical activity. And just back to Karen, she's probably gone now, but one of the outputs of this was children were involved in dance and athletics and netball and various sports. So this particular programme is about building those blocks so that children can actually engage in the wider activities.
Thanks, William.
I think, and I just finished by saying, I agree with the joined upness. I think early intervention, it's proven that early intervention, so many things that we've heard about this morning, early intervention is both cheaper and more effective. Thank you.
Thanks, William. I mean, as part of the cross-party lobbying of the government departments, when there was a risk of the curriculum sports programme funding for it ceasing, we heavily encouraged cross-departmental funding of the programme. I think there are too few examples of pooled budgeting on programmes in the Northern Ireland Executive. It probably didn't help at the time that there were no ministers, but hopefully with ministers in place, the type of suggestions you're making, William, in terms of pooled budgets and cross-departmental support for a programme like this can be taken forward. Keep us moving along here because we're particularly tight for time this morning. Can I bring in Daniel, please? Thanks, Daniel McCrossen.
Thank you, Chair. Eugene, Michael and Claire, Michael and Callum on the screen, you're very welcome. Presentation is very, very helpful. This is something that's hugely important for a variety of reasons. The arguments are very well made, and some of the stats that you provided today is very helpful for supporting the argument. I had support what the Chair has said and support many proposals that you've come forward with. I know that the programme fell foul to the absence of these institutions, and it caused a considerable amount of issue for quite a lot of coaches in my wider area in West Tyrone and beyond. And I've seen a lot of people very distressed about having to make decisions about leaving something they love doing because they couldn't plan to pay their mortgage at the end of the month due to the uncertainty. I'll be glad to see this issue resolved, and let's remember it's absolutely in the interests of everybody that there is greater funding provided and certainty to the programme. This is not a cost, in my opinion. I think it's an investment and a necessary one that will pay considerable dividends if you consider the return in terms of well-being of younger people, both mental and physical health, but also in a world of social media where younger people are stuck to screens now, whereas I would have been thrown out with a ball when I was a lot younger, is having a considerable impact. So I think it's important now more than ever that we do invest. And I can't echo the words of the Chair. I'm more of a successful spectator than participant, and I've had quite a lot of interesting incidents whilst I'm on the pitch, including the broken arm whilst in nets and no one near me. So explain that. But William has answered a number or asked a number of the questions I was going to ask. But just in terms of the impact. If we don't move beyond this 12-month programme and the uncertainty, what do you believe the impact of that will be in the long term, unless this issue is resolved now with the return of the institutions on young people?
Personally, I just think one of our biggest issues is sustaining staff and giving people some sort of security. Now, obviously, no job's ever 100% secure, but at least if people have some idea that there's a 3-year programme here, a 3-year window, we can plan over a 3-year period. But at the minute, we're basically planning on a 3-month period, or even on a monthly period due to COVID. But certainly, longevity in the programme would allow us to do a bit of longitudinal research as well, in terms of pre, middle and post the project, and also allow us to, I suppose, get around more schools as well and make more impact in schools. Plus the teacher support. We have done some work with the Education Authority and the Shared Education Programme. That particular project only ran for a small window because the funding was for that small window. That was hugely successful. Again, a limited number of schools, our partnership schools were able to get involved in it. But that is a project that is ready to go, and I think it's a project that needs to happen. So the implications are really around the whole staffing thing and retention of good people, plus the long-term planning of any project.
What level of funding is required in this long term, develop it to its full potential?
Yeah, well, we spent a lot of time working with the Ulster GAA on the back of Callum's research, developing a proposal. So we're asking for 2.5 million over 3 years, and the current funding runs out March in 21. So we're looking from April 21 right through to March 24, and that would give us the tools to do what we we believe we can achieve. And I don't know if Callum wants to come in at this point to talk about, because I know he had talked to a lot of the schools and a lot of the teachers about the impact if you take this away. It's basically taking away some of the school's capacity to deliver any PE. And I don't know if Callum wants to come in at this point.
Callum, yep.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Thank you. There's a couple of things it's probably worth noting at this point. We had a spectrum of interaction from the teachers. Some who were incredibly confident about being in a PE lesson, and some who were, this was the scariest thing in the universe. And I think the way Eugene put it, put me in a music class, and I will really struggle to teach that class. And the same is the other way around with some of the teachers. So there's a couple of pieces on that in terms of the data we've collected. And when we spoke to the schools at length, we asked them what the differences are between this programme and other coaches or coaching programmes that come into schools. And although it wasn't the highest level, because coach expertise, technical content, pupil engagement were the top scorers, staff engagement existed. And when we asked the difference between this and other programmes, they talked about the staff engaged. In the more engaged schools, the teachers were telling me, we're really sorry, but we steal all your ideas. And I was explaining to them, no, we want you to steal ideas. Please steal as much as you can. What else can we get you to steal? But in the less engaged schools, with the teachers who perhaps, and there was a mix of smaller schools in geographically isolated areas, just schools that by virtue of chance didn't really have a PE specialist or someone with a sport background. There was almost this desire for this flexibility of delivery. So maybe not just being constrained to key stage 2, if you like, but being able to flexibly deliver on what the school needed or the pupils needed. But the other point on investment, which I think Eugene's articulated really well, I'd probably just add that the schools sometimes don't know what's happening with the programme come the end of the year, and they notice that a coach may change, or that suddenly there was a lot of activity and it's changed now from basically a coach being in there as a member of staff for the year to being a 10-week block, and then the show leaves town. So although there's a huge impact for the coaches, there's a huge impact for the schools as well in not knowing what's coming around the corner. And that's really important, particularly what we found in smaller schools, geographically isolated schools, or schools with less staff is probably the easiest way to do it, because by virtue of numbers, we see less PE specialists in those schools. And almost there's this fear that, oh my word, we're not going to get any support with our PE lessons, or this is a factor. If I was being completely honest, I'd say delivering a 10-week block of activity and expecting the same level of delivery from staff is probably not possible. I think there's more we can do in the architecture of the programme to build in more support for the schools once the delivery is left, and that's something that's gone into the proposal, and it's something that would be welcomed by most schools. But this factor of what would happen if the programme wasn't there, I think, I wouldn't use the word catastrophic, but I think there'd be a serious decrease in the quantity and the quality of physical activity within the schools. And what we've seen, even in those pupils with baseline who don't particularly have an interest in sport, in inverted commas, they do talk about friends, fun, games, PE giving them energy, them feeling inspired, them feeling better after PE. And we also see, which has just come out through the baseline, I think we just got the data when we prepared the briefing note, we do see those children doing more than 60 minutes of physical activity a day, have higher confidence levels, and probably most importantly, they are more likely to want to solve problems, not just give up on something. So I think there's some fairly grim prospects if this programme or other programmes of its like weren't in existence anymore.
Thanks, Callum. Briefly, Daniel.
Callum, you hit a very interesting point, because the benefits of this programme, as I said, the arguments are well made, and encourages team working, engagement, problem solving. I'm wondering, could we sign the executive up to your programme?
Okay, thanks. On that note, Robbie Butler, MLA.
Thank you, Chair. I thought today actually what you might have done was been fair to Justin, because Justin is an MLA for SDLP. I think he's an MLA for GAA, because I don't think there's a speech in this chamber that ever goes past without Justin leveraging the GAA somewhere. So I look forward to Justin's contribution.
I'll make sure we get him in, don't worry.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I was part of the cross-party group, as most of you will know, a couple of years ago with Chris and Justin, so I'm not going to rehearse some of the pressures, because you guys are very quickly coming around to the same position I believe that we were in a couple of years ago with regard to funding and the longitudinal piece of it. I have no doubt you'll get the support of this committee, and you know that my primary drive is mental health and suicide prevention, and I want to thank each of the organisations for the support that you gave me 2 years ago when you supported me. I think it was Hope Sunday we called it, and there was representatives from each of the sectors that came, and some of them have kept friends with me. But I think at times what you guys do, and it's out of a false modesty, it's not a false modesty, it's a modesty when you shouldn't do it, because we have some fantastic sporting icons, even at this moment in time, across all three sports. We've got something, probably in my lifetime, I'm a wee bit older than Chris, but certainly in my lifetime, I think, certainly the rugby, the football and the GAA's never had the profile it's had, but the impact that has with young people is enormous. I mean, I listened to Ashley McConville yesterday. He was talking about the COVID and what the GAA might do next. I thought he spoke wonderfully well. I think the leadership that Steve Davis gives us as the captain of Northern Ireland, and my personal favourite, who's Josh McGuinness. Josh came to that Sunday, absolutely fabulous. And the work that they do, not particularly for football, rugby, just Gilroy came to that. And so what they do, other than their sport, is they actually do what you're trying to do in terms of that iconic bit, and I think it's wonderful. And I think that what that gives us is the spread. That's the good stuff I'm going to talk about. So I want you to really not be shy about leaning on your stars, because they will pick up and motivate the young people to do more, because we do know that PE isn't a well-driven curriculum activity in school, so we need you guys to pick up a bit of that. I'm going to give you some challenges, but okay, one of the things that I haven't heard today is your interaction with special schools. Okay. So you'll know it, well, hopefully you'll know that it's a priority of this committee to see all of our pupils, regardless of the sector they're in, to ensure that they're not left behind and not forgotten about. So I'm going to ask two questions. That's the first one. So if there's anything that's been ongoing, or there's anything that can be done, or that there's anything we can help with to ensure that there's no sector that is forgotten about. And then the other piece, and this goes with the mental health piece, you know that there's an emotional health and wellbeing framework document that is going to be put out probably in December. So if you can tell me, because you have 15 years of experience with the department, have you had any engagement with that group that is driving that framework? And if not, we'll try and make sure that happens. I would imagine parental partnership is going to be key. So I know that the Deputy Chair talked about this. So it's the facilities in the schools, it's the resources and stuff that needs to be good. So people like somewhere good to go to, they like quality facilities, but really the partnership with parents as well. So the schools is a brilliant place to get it. Okay, that's definitely the right focus. However, when kids go out of schools, the parental buy-in is critical to getting the young people to engage outside of school too. I'll leave it there, guys, and if you can answer all of that, then I'm done.
I'll jump in first just on that. With regards to the special schools, the coaches do go into special schools, and also each code would have programmes outside of the Denny programme as well. So basically in football, any school that's special school or caters for people with disabilities is offered free coaching and support. So and through the programme, actually the partnership decided, it wasn't a requirement from Denny at the time, we decided it was the right thing to do, and we sent our coaches into those schools. So we didn't touch on it earlier, but that's something that we've been doing for a long time. With regards to the mental health piece, the sports actually met last week. Rugby, GAA, netball and Ulster boxing had a meeting around what we can do collectively, and we had Tony Murphy from Department for Communities sat in on the meeting as well. What we're looking at is developing an online course, and just on the point that you touched on, about the videos and using the stars and using the mental health champions, from the sports. Part of the idea is to develop a course which has video resources, which shines the spotlight on some of those people from the different sports as well. So those resources are being developed, and we're putting together a proposal for the Coping with COVID fund with Tony on that. So there's a lot happening there. We also have our own, heads up ahead of the game programs that all fit in with the 5 steps and the mental health framework. So we're very well connected in those ways. Parental Partnerships, all the sports, as far as I'm aware of, support the Parents in Sports Week. And we also in football have workshops specifically for parents because they play such an important role in the development of the young players and the young kids. So I'm sure the other sports have something similar, but I'll pass on to Eugene.
Yeah, something similar to Michael there. You know, we do try and target the special schools. Again, this comes down to a resource issue and also the expertise of the coaches going in, because obviously that's we're talking about specialist area, it's a specialist area, so it's very important that we get the right people in. But yeah, GAA for all, autism and coaching, the wheelchair sports that IFA do and we do ourselves, and I know rugby have done some stuff as well. So that's very important. And one of the interesting programs is bringing the wheelchairs into a run-of-the-mill school where a child is in a wheelchair in that class, and getting the other kids into the wheelchairs and giving them that experience of, well, this is my mate who's sitting over there, and this is the experience that he's having. So it helps them empathise a wee bit better with the children. Parental engagement is a challenge in GAA and the broader context, but the fact that we're actually engaging the parents through our research and our surveys that we're doing is a very positive thing. And we did have a homework club at one stage for PE, and some of the parents were complaining, but I think that could be something we could revisit.
Very good,
yeah. From our point of view, last year 12% of our delivery was in special education needs schools. One of the challenges we have around that is that it's funded currently through the Everybody Active programme, which comes to an end in March 2021. And it's where the ability to source funding beyond that. So again, some of the themes that we've talked on previously about that cross-departmental multi-year funding to address some of these issues is really key, and we will see an impact of that come the end of this financial year. And as Eugene has said, it's very much down to having specialist coaches who can go in and engage. In terms of disability rugby generally, Ulster as a province has led the way across the island of Ireland. And one of the key things that we've now seen is that the RFU, as the national governing body, have now appointed a disability officer for the first time to really lead the strategy on that. But that's something that proudly we have been pushing very hard, both provincially and nationally. And one of the key things for us is creating that link between the club and the school, because it's about what the children can do beyond their involvement in the school at that stage. So that's a key piece of work for us, but it's certainly something we'd be concerned about beyond this year if funding can't be extended. In terms of the mental health programme, Michael has very clearly stated the work that we have been doing, and we're committed to that. And it's a programme that we've seen tremendous benefit from, again, just using sport as that anchor to engage people, but the wider benefits that come out the back of it. And then around parental engagement and young person's engagement, pieces of work that we've done over the last couple of years have been about how do we broaden people's involvement, and how do we broaden people's perspective in terms of delivering some of our strategies going forward as well. So whether that's through surveys or speaking to parents directly and trying to understand what their needs and requirements are is part of feeding into our future development, because it's not just about maybe the view of a coach, but everyone that has a stake in terms of the delivery of the game. What do they want to see out of that? So it's key for us and a key piece of work going forward.
Pass on my apology to Craig Gilroy, because I just called him Gilroy and I hate calling anybody by their second name. Just had a mind fog, so apologies Craig, I'm sure he's listening into this.
just one thing I wanted to add was in football we've had a disability manager since 1997. The current disability manager is Alan Crooks, who's a pro licence football coach, but we fund all of that outside of the relationship with the Department of Education. But one thing I wanted just to note as a good news point was that the Northern Ireland Power Chair team have qualified for the World Cup, which is going to be in Australia in 2022, and I know a lot of the work that went into engaging those kids initially came through the schools programmes.
How's that? Can I just ask, how's that funded?
Very briefly,
do you remember what happened last year with the youth games and stuff? Did this fail because of funding? Is it a government funded initiative, or is that privately funded in terms of getting them to Australia, making sure they compete?
We're in a very fortunate position where we can access some support through UEFA under social responsibility. So the way we target our UEFA funding around social responsibilities for mental health and for the disability programmes.
They're going.
All right.
Excellent. Super, thank you.
Michael, I'm glad you managed to get a reference to living legend and IFA Disability Football Programme Manager Alan Crooks into the committee this morning. I coached in Fleming Fulton Special School with Alan Crooks and a disability football club as well. He wouldn't have let you away with not having mentioned him there, Michael. I'm glad you did.
You didn't get a mention anyway.
Thanks, Robbie. Can I bring in Justin McNulty, MLA? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Robbie, I'd be more than happy to be an MLA solely for the GAA. Michael, Eugene, Claire, Michael, Callum and Chris, delighted to have you all before committee today, and it's refreshing to hear your perspectives, refreshing to hear your inputs, all from competing sports, but collaborating warmly together and positively together for the greater good, to help to raise children up. And it's very, very powerful and positive and important, the work you're all doing. So I commend you all in terms of what the information you're bringing before us today, and the work you're doing on a daily basis in schools and in communities. I find it astounding that you're before this committee today with your begging bowls so that we can have children access and physical activity, a sufficient level of physical activity in schools. I find it absolutely astonishing that is where we're at as a society in the modern world. It's incredible. I would like some information in terms of how you feel the drop-off in sports drop-off in participation after 16, how that can be addressed, and how you are potentially addressing that as is in terms of the delivery of your programmes.
Yeah, if I maybe just jump in there from an Ulster Rugby point of view, so transition, that drop off from sort of age 16 onwards is something which we've identified as a key concern of ours, because if you think about the investment in the sport that an individual has had, either within a school environment or a club environment, if they've been playing rugby or playing any sport and all of a sudden come to a cliff face at the age of 16 and just drop off, then that's lost. So one of the things that we have looked at has been this idea of transitioning players and transitioning pupils from school into club sport, sort of post 16, and looking at what are the challenges that those young people face. So it's not always about the sport necessarily, it's about all the other things that might be going on in their life, whether that's education, employment, and then looking at, okay, well, what are the solutions that we can put in place that choosing sport is an easy thing for them to do. So how do we make the sport accessible? How do we make the sport appropriate to what their needs are? So I referenced earlier on some of the work that we've been doing around asking the young people, because I think that's sometimes what gets missed, is actually asking the young people what they want and then providing that opportunity to continue to play. And that might be in modified games, it might be in modified structures, but it's really important that we as a sport meet their requirements and then make that really easy for them as well, and understand that it is a difficult and challenging time for them. And again, research would show to us that once we get them sort of post-18, we'll keep them for another few years, and maybe the next drop-off comes for those students that go to university or college, and just that transition in life. So we see that as one of our key areas of work moving forward. And what we've also engaged as well is, because rugby is played at the age grade level in many different formats, whether that's in school or in club, is actually bringing all of those stakeholders together to understand and pull together a strategy which looks at how we best support those age grade players, regardless of where they're playing the sport. So again, are there opportunities to create a product or create an offering which appeals to them and keeps them involved? And I think that's really important, is taking that young person's voice, listening to it, and then providing something which they want to take hold of and get involved in.
Okay, thanks Chris. Michael, Eugene, do you want to respond briefly to that as well, and bring Justin back in obviously?
Yeah, just really quickly, outside of the Denny programme, we employ 3 Football for All Schools officers, Mal Donaghy, Ross Redmond, Jackie Blythe, and 2 education officers, Dermot McNeice and Gareth Allen, and they focus on the post-primary schools to keep young people engaged. We also have a schools quality mark, which gives young people volunteer experience and structured work experience programmes with the Irish FA Foundation. We have the Women's Performance Academy at Ulster University and the Boys Performance Academy there for the better players, to keep them engaged. We're also exploring how we develop football and sports related BTECs and we have our education officers delivering in Ashfield, in East Belfast, and the colleges in Larne and Coleraine. And there's lots going on to try and encourage young people, even if they're not particularly good players, if they have an interest in sport. The Irish FA Foundation offers multi-sport programmes as well to support those young people to stay engaged and to stay active, and to give them work experience and employability skills. So there's a lot of investment outside of the Denny programme in football that goes into post-primary schools. Thanks,
Michael. Eugene?
Yeah, just quickly, Justin, you'll be aware of some of these, but post-16 is obviously a huge issue, and particularly for females, and keeping the females involved. And we have two employees through Ladies Gaelic Football who work on the Gaelic for Girls programme in the schools, and then working in the clubs to promote the school club link, which I think is key to sustaining their activity. On the male side, on the men's side, we have a programme called Super Games, which is targeting again those that don't want to be like yourself, maybe on a competitive basis. And that Super Games programme really is on a regional basis where people can drop in and play the games. But there's the other side of it in terms of retaining 16 plus and getting young people involved in volunteer training and the volunteer awards that Michael's referred to. So they become basically the administrators within clubs, not necessarily the coaches. Karen earlier referred to dance, for example. And one of the things with our Key Stage 2 programme is that we try and encourage our coaches not only to coach basic skills, ABCs, but also to encourage movement and music, and gymnastics and those sorts of activities, just to broaden the scope a wee bit. So yeah, post-16 is a huge issue, but again, as far as I'm aware, PE is not compulsory in the second level schools post-16. And once they get into lower sixth and upper sixth, they can opt out of it, as far as I'm aware. So I think in the schools we need to be providing something that's not necessarily just about rugby, Gaelic football, or football. There has to be other activities available for young females to encourage them to participate in physical activity. I think the word's physical activity, not necessarily sport, physical activity.
Justin?
Yeah, Eugene, you touched on that with the physical literacy piece, which is crucially important across all sports. And I love your anecdotal input in relation to the wheelchair and the empathy piece, which is just wonderfully positive for young children to have those experiences, and to do that through physical education. It's just phenomenal. In terms of this programme that you've sought 2.5 million for from the Minister, which it's in his thoughts, which is wonderful that it's in his thoughts. There's been more paid out in early during this COVID pandemic than that, so it's a real shame that we can't find 2.5 million to enhance the physical well-being and mental well-being and emotional well-being of our children and our teachers and our coaches. What is the difference between what's being delivered now, Eugene, and the further programme which you're hoping to extend beyond 3 years with that 2.5 million you've sought?
Well, I think Michael can come in here as well on the back of this, but originally the programme was focused on Key Stage 1, and to be honest with you, it wasn't our decision to move away from Key Stage 1. We still think there's a huge gap there, and that work has to continue. It's probably the more challenging area, Key Stage 1, because you're really delivering those physical literacy skills. And part of our project that we've submitted is to redress that and to get some delivery at the Key Stage 1 phase, but also to expand the number of coaches as well, Justin, because we feel basically what's there is only scraping, as Michael Glover had said earlier, he gave the figures, is only scraping the surface. So those are the two things that we want to try and address within the revised proposal.
And just on the back, when we break that proposal down, we're looking for 2 programme managers, one for GAA, one for football, 4 regional coordinators, 20 programme mentors to oversee the delivery in the schools and the capacity building. A big thing for us in this proposal is the academic research, building on the good work that Callum's presented, and building that in on an annual basis to make sure that we can track the impact. Developing website resources is a component of it, and also developing resources across the curriculum that use sports, so that we're not just helping with physical activity, we're helping with geography, we're helping with maths, we're helping with English, and we're using the power of sport as a hook to get young people more engaged in those other subjects is really important to us as well. So it's a comprehensive proposal that we've pulled together. and we feel that it builds on the experience that we have delivering, but also the insights that Callum's presented through his research.
Justin, I need you to bring your questions to a close. Is that okay? Yep.
Yeah, well, great. Yeah, I will do. Obviously, there's an epidemic of potential come down the line, obesity, mental health, and diabetes, and that can be addressed through programs such as this. In terms of the cost-cutting impact of the work that you guys are doing, it's more than just physical impact. It's mental impact, it's emotional impact, it's educational impact, it's character development, it's leadership development. It's so many benefits. Can there be a study, a cost-benefits analysis study done or undertaken? I might commission a piece of research with the Assembly Research, but a cost-benefits analysis study of how good physical activity at school level then blossoms into so many different areas of children's lives and into the economy, into education economy, and it's just completely cross-cutting and so positive. That note you mentioned around the coaches there, Michael and Eugene, coaches need to be valued in our society. Coaches need to be recognised for the really important, life-changing work they do, and they're feeling now is they're almost a secondary thought because of the way they've been treated by our Department of Education for too long now. Coaches are very, very important members of society and need to be valued and held up as the life changers that they are. And I fully support the work that you guys are doing, and I hope that our Education Minister will see sense and back the programme that is necessary for young people on so many different fronts.
Thanks, Justin. Thank you. Can I bring in Maurice Bradley to finish us? Maurice there, yep. Should be.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for the presentation. Can I assure you that, like the rest of the committee, I believe very strongly in sport, and I would encourage children to take part in as many sports as possible until they reach an age where they can develop the sport they would like before they went to teenage and adult life. My own sport, like the Chair, is football, and I've been very lucky to play non-stop from 14 to 54. Done through the coach, the administration, the manager, done the whole gambit. Been involved with the formation of Korean FC Academy, and the formation of the Harry Gregg Foundation. So I see firsthand and have seen firsthand the benefits of sport, particularly team sports, can have on young people and young people's development and the adult life. So I'm a firm believer in sport, and I commend each and every one of the three coaches here today for the work that they do in schools. But I would ask a few questions. Really, most of the rest of the questions have been asked by the members, so I'll just touch down on the financial side. What financial contribution is made by the governing bodies of each code towards the programme?
Financial contribution the governing body makes to the coach, to the programme.
To the programme, I think.
To the programme. Yeah. So, like collectively, if you pull together the additional, work that the GAA and the IFA, put towards schools outside of the Denny programme, if you were to say it's in the region of $500,000, that would be like a conservative estimate when you actually put on a figure on what we invest through other staff and through other programs. And Claire touched on some of them, like the likes of the Disney Playmakers for girls, the Shooting Stars programs, the Schools Quality Mark, the Football for All Schools officers, and the GAA have their own, and I'm sure rugby make a significant contribution through their programs, and other sports do as well. But in our specific partnership, a conservative estimate would be around about $500,000 outside of Denny.
I think the investment, by the department goes directly to the staff and the equipment that we would use to deliver in the programs. So that's it. Any other costs then are incurred by the governing body. So recruitment costs, the management of the programme, the marketing of the programme, any website stuff. A lot of that is something, to be honest with you, we haven't costed. And when we go through this exercise for the proposal to the department, it's something we feel we need to do, because if you refer to Appendix 6 on the document that we circulated, we actually listed down a lot of the programmes that we would deliver in education, in the education context. A lot of those programmes there are outside of this particular programme, so I'm not sure how we cost those up, but certainly there's a very significant investment.
Just a wee reminder, due to a remembrance service occurring in the Senate chamber, we've got to finish up very shortly. So, Morris, I'll let you come in with a next question there.
Thanks, Chair, and I will. Through the governing bodies with schools and councils through the use of local facilities that are available through public ownership, and they also work through the council's own sports development officers in developing this programme.
So was it, Morris, just you were cut off at the start there, was the question about working in partnership with council sports development officers?
Oh, the question was, do the governing bodies, key representative bodies, work with local councils to ensure the use of local facilities under public ownership, and also the council sports development officers? Yeah, well, in football we have football community hubs based in council facilities. We have 2 in Belfast and 1 in each of the other council areas, where we work really closely with the sports development officers and the community planning teams from the council. So in football we work through the hubs, and in particular to benefit grassroots clubs and volunteers through that avenue. But we've had an existing relationship with councils for the guts of 15 years.
We're in a similar position that we receive funding through a number of the councils for delivery of grassroots rugby, and that would support local clubs who in turn are then working within the schools. So that's part of a number of different programmes, including Everybody Active.
Yeah, we're similar, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Morris.
That's good to know, gentlemen. Yeah, it's good to know. Chairman, I'm breaking up here, so I'll call a halt. There's another question.
No problem, Morris. Thank you
for your presentation. Found it very worthwhile.
Thank you, Morris. We obviously need to conclude promptly here, but just in conclusion, thank you again for your presentation and for the work you're doing to address what, in my mind, is close to a national scandal. Yeah. The Children's Sport Participation and Physical Activity Study found that only 19% of primary pupils receive 19% of primary pupils receive 30 minutes or less PE per week, and only 40% of post-primary pupils receive recommended 2 hours per week. I think that's an optimistic estimate as well. Yeah. If we were delivering that amount of any other curriculum for any other statutory curriculum subject, it would be a headline, a national scandal. So we've got to get that. We've got to address this. And a previous motion in the Assembly asked for the Education Minister to monitor this more closely and to consult on that recommended hours PE per week. So thank you to all of you for the work that you and your teams are doing to improve that access to physical activity in our schools, and you'll have the full backing of this Education Committee to support that ongoing work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Okay, Clark, are we best adjourning for now, and we'll consider the actions that we take further to that briefing when we return
at 11:40.
At 11:40, members. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
The Northern Ireland Assembly, Senate Chamber.
Back to this meeting of the Education Committee. Further to our briefing on the curriculum sports programme from the IFA, GAA and Ulster Rugby, can I ask the clerk to summarise any actions or requests resulting from the briefing?
Chairperson, if I could just ask broadcasting to add the members back into the spotlight again. So I think we have Robbie, we have Justin and Karen, and I think Morris all online. So I think, Chairperson, I'm sensing from members that they strongly support the suggestion that there should be a new IFA GAA £2.5 million primary school programme, and that they want to write to the Minister indicating their support for said programme whenever he comes to consider the budget for next year, and also perhaps write to the Minister asking about the measures that the Department has in place in terms of monitoring and reporting on the delivery of physical education in schools, and whether he's considering a consultation on a statutory obligation to provide to require schools to provide PE for a particular amount of time every week. Person.
Yes. Could I supplement that, Clerk, just by, could we also request the most up-to-date data on pupil participation and access to physical education hours per week. The study that you kindly provided us with suggested that as little as 40% of post-primary pupils were accessing the recommended 2 hours per week. So if we could request up-to-date data for primary and post-primary on access to physical education curriculum hours, that would be great. Members agreed with all of those actions otherwise?
Yep.
Agreed?
Should I suggest something else?
Yeah,
please?
Justin. Yeah, Justin.
Can the committee commission a cost benefits analysis in terms of the impact of completion of PE and physical activity at primary school and at grammar school or secondary school, in terms of how that's the impact on the economy, impact on our health services through physical activity, and impact on education in terms of heightened engagement academically because of their kids' involvement. So just an overall cost benefits analysis in terms of the importance of PE in school.
So what we can do is ask Assembly Research whether such studies have been done and to sort of come back to us with that information, because that would be quite a significant piece of work. So I imagine it may have well been done by other researchers, and maybe both independent and up to date. So we'll do that, Chairperson.
Yeah, Justin. I don't think the committee would have the resources to do that per se, but as the clerk says, if we could endeavour to access work of that nature that has already been done, or then ask if it's planned to be done anywhere, content for that as a first action.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Yeah.
Thanks, Justin. Okay. Members agreed with those actions for now. Yeah, agreed. Anything else, clerk? Nope. Okay, just check my notes quickly, clerk, there. Members, is it worth adding to that a question to the department with regards to what in particular is being done to encourage girls' participation in physical education and sport?
Could I ask you a question? This might encompass that. I think what would be an interesting question is to understand the barriers to non-participation in sport from across everybody. So you'd given a figure of around 40% participants. Those will be probably the same kids the whole way through education. So maybe the broader ask is study into the barriers. Has there been any work done to understand why there isn't a greater uptake?
Yeah, so up-to-date data on participation, and then ask the question in relation to barriers. Robbie, why are we not... Why the recommended hours of physical education statutory curriculum are not being met? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Morris.
Morris, yep.
Yeah, sorry for cutting across you. Could we as a committee find out what provision there would be through the physical education teachers within the schools, and why they're not promoting more activity within the schools instead of bringing people outside in? You understand what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. It's
there's along the line.
Yeah, it's...
And if we've got teachers, why are they not introducing more physical education to and more physical participation to the curriculum in the school without having to rely on outside bodies coming in to do it for them?
Yeah, I think there's some key questions there, Morris. It does flow from the why are the recommended hours for the statutory curriculum.
Clarify that in terms of you wouldn't send Eugene Young in to teach music.
Yeah, no,
it's a specific area of expertise that these sporting organisations are providing schools, which the schools don't have in house.
Yeah, no, I think there's a policy debate as well there, Justin. So the first question of why we're not meeting the recommended statutory curriculum for physical education will lead on to that. And as you'll recall, some of the reasons that were being cited about us previously or some of the pushback in the case being made for the likes of the IFN GAA assisting with meeting this unmet statutory requirement was that primary school teachers have been trained and equipped to deliver physical education. But there are clearly reasons as to why that is not then resulting in the recommended statutory curriculum being met. Now, as it has been raised previously, is that because that training is inadequate? Is that because it's it's just a flat rate unreasonable expectation to place on a primary school teacher, with non-expertise in this area, as you say, Justin? I think we do need to get to the bottom of that, because there is we need to better understand the nature of the problem, which is there clearly is a problem in terms of the pupils not accessing the recommended statutory curriculum for physical education. So we need to better understand what it is, and then we can support responses to that. As you say, Justin, that may well be, from a philosophical point of view, it is reasonable to partner with external bodies to meet that need rather than expect teachers to do it. Or, as Morris alluded to, is it not possible for teachers to be more equipped? I know that part of the curriculum sports programme is to equip teachers with more confidence, more skills, more knowledge to be able to, when the sports programmes move on from their school, to continue to deliver physical activity. But there are some aspects of the curriculum that the Department of Education regularly funds outside assistance with, like Young Enterprise, for example. So I think we need to get into the detail of it a bit more. But members content that we're asking the right questions there to allow us to move on. Karen? Karen,
on there to supplement Morris's, and apologies, I had it out, so
no problem.
I must get benefit, but it's really just on that participation and finding out around what activities is on offer, what over and above. So adding on to what Morris had just said there, what is the complement that's offered within schools for young people?
Maybe we could get a copy of the PE curriculum as well then. Members content to request that,
That's in the public domain, so
if you
could report what's on offer, which is not quite the same thing. So
just on that as well, Chair, I think it's important as we move forward, any investment in the school estate, particularly new build schools, reflect the need for facilities that meet the curriculum. Because I'm aware, for instance, of, it's not a new build, but 4 schools in my constituency, primary schools, came together, crammed into a small primary school just outside of Strabane, and there's no facilities for children to participate in any form of sport. And that just is madness, in my opinion. I don't know what the criteria was, but clearly that's not a part of it.
No, I think resources and facilities and teacher hours are going to come into this for sure. The department can set a recommendation of 2 hours for the statutory curriculum, but if the schools don't have the resources, space or skills to deliver it, then there's a major barrier there.
And it's worsened as a result of COVID, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. Members content with those questions? Yep.
Chair, just an add on there, Chair. Right.
Morris, go ahead. Yeah, Morris, go ahead.
Just an add on what it's like in the other constituencies, but in my constituency, I'm aware that there are some very, very good and really excellent GAA coaches and soccer coaches who are also teachers at primary school level, and I just don't think we're making use of their skill sets. And the other thing, and another point, is facilities. Yes, schools need facilities, but where there are facilities, i.e. provided by the local council, the schools should have a very, very reduced rate to allow them to take the offer up to use those facilities.
Okay. Members content? Okay. Clark, I just checked, we have to be out of this room by 1:20 at the absolute latest, so we will need to move promptly. We do have correspondence to discharge after our next briefing as well. Okay, members, agenda item 7 is our Department of Education Authority briefing on the Emotional Health and Wellbeing Framework. Can I ask Assembly Broadcasting to remove all members from the spotlight and add our witnesses? Can I refer members to a cover note from the clerk at page 82, copy of the draft Children and Young People's Emotional Health and Wellbeing in Education Framework at page 101, papers from the National Children's Bureau, Bernardo's and the Elephant in the Room report from page 159, an ETI report on emotional health and wellbeing support in schools and EOTIS centres at page 206, Can I welcome then Ricky Irwin, Director, Inclusion and Wellbeing at the Department of Education, Angela Kane, Head of Pupil Support Team at the Department of Education, and Shauna Collinson, Interim Assistant Director of Pupil Inclusion, Wellbeing and Protection. And by way of welcome, can I say that one of the first things that the Committee for Education focused on when it was formally constituted in January 2020 was emotional health and wellbeing. We were appalled by the growing level of anxiety among children, the need to build resilience and the importance of cross-departmental working. These concerns have only grown during lockdown and restart, and the Committee is therefore glad to welcome back the Department and the Education Authority to brief us on this important issue. Can I advise witnesses that the Committee will give you 10 to 15 minutes to make an opening statement and follow that with questions from members. Over to you, Ricky.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Committee. Thank you for giving us this opportunity today to update you on the progress we've made in developing an emotional health and wellbeing framework for children and young people whilst they are in education. We last appeared before you in February 2020, providing an overview of the findings from the National Children's Bureau's research report called Informing the Development of an Emotional Health and Wellbeing Framework for Children and Young People in Northern Ireland. And we reported on progress on the framework itself. So since then, Chair and members of the Committee, a lot has happened. As we discussed previously, we know that many educational settings are providing excellent support. However, the issues being faced by our children and young people are becoming increasingly complex. The COVID-19 pandemic has undoubtedly exacerbated this situation, with multiple studies reporting that coronavirus and lockdown had a negative impact on young people's mental health and well-being. So this is something that we must also factor in. In building our approach to well-being here in Northern Ireland, a lot of necessary building blocks are now in place. So the Children's Services Cooperation Act of 2015 created a duty on public bodies here to make arrangements for cooperation to improve the well-being of children. The Children and Young People Strategy for 2019 to 2029 includes a commitment to improve well-being for all children and young people. We have, for the first time, a mental health champion for Northern Ireland, Professor Siobhan O'Neill, and the creation of this role underlines the significant priority that mental health has become. The landmark Mental Health of Children and Parents in Northern Ireland results of the Youth Wellbeing Prevalence Study has recently been published. This is the first of its kind in Northern Ireland, providing data on more than 3,000 children and young people, as well as more than 2,800 parents and carers. Together, these provide a wonderful opportunity to make a significant difference in the lives of children and young people. We have been working collaboratively with the Department of Health, the Department for Communities, the Department of Justice, Public Health Agency, Health and Social Care Board, the Education Authority, along with a range of other stakeholders to develop the wellbeing framework. We have also taken account of the new Children and Young People's Emotional Health and Wellbeing Services Framework, which was developed by the Health and Social Care Board and the Public Health Agency, to ensure we collectively improve access to services and in turn deliver a more positive experience for children and young people. You received a copy of the current draft education framework in advance of today's meeting. This has been developed with an overall aim of reducing the number of children and young people needing more specialist help for emotional health and wellbeing difficulties. It aims to do this by supporting educational settings to promote emotional health and wellbeing at a universal level through a holistic, multidisciplinary approach, by providing early and enhanced support for those children and young people who may be at risk or showing signs of needing further help, and by supporting staff to ensure they can effectively support children and young people in their care. This will be done through the three-tier model of support set out within the document, which underpins the framework and reflects the previously mentioned strong focus on promotion, prevention and early intervention. And I will set out those three elements now. The first is well-being for all, and this includes the following: a whole child, whole school, whole community approach to the promotion of well-being. A holistic and integrated approach which recognises that a child or young person entering school feeling happy, healthy, safe and connected to the educational setting is more likely to fully engage with their learning. For those not feeling that way, it also ensures support is provided. Parents and carers would be integral to the educational setting and the child's well-being. The educational setting is the hub of its community, linking with local, voluntary and community sectors. High value and significance placed on staff well-being within the setting, and if staff are not effectively supported, they cannot be expected to properly support the children and young people in their care. The next element of the framework is early support, and this is the early identification of problems and provision of effective early support before difficulties escalate, and includes provision of training and capacity building for staff in recognising signs of difficulty and how to respond. Interventions can include school-based group work or one-to-one evidence-based programmes and will involve integrated working across education, health and community services. The final element is enhanced support, and this is when a more specialised service intervention is needed for children and young people presenting with more complex emotional needs which schools are not in a position to provide. So in developing this three-tier model of support, we have listened carefully to the concerns voiced by many educational settings supporting children and young people presenting with increasingly complex needs. Delay in identifying and addressing potential needs can have a far-reaching effect on their lives. Underlining the priority and significance of this work, the Education Minister has supported its development and implementation with an annual recurrent budget of £5 million, with a further identified pressure from 21-22 onwards. And I'm delighted to say that the Health Minister has also committed to provide £1.5 million annually from 21-22 onwards. A draft implementation plan has been developed and is based on priorities identified by DE and its strategic partners in this framework. As you will appreciate, effective integrated working between education and health in particular is central to the successful implementation of the three-tier model. We recognise this in itself represents a significant challenge and has therefore been the initial focus for implementation. You will have seen a high-level overview in the document of the framework, and I wanted to elaborate on a few of the projects just to give you a flavour of what's being proposed. RISE, which stands for the Regional Integrated Support for Education in Northern Ireland, is one of the projects, and this would be an expansion of the current RISE teams into Key Stage 2 in schools. The RISE teams are comprised of multidisciplinary health professionals, including clinical psychologists, social, emotional and behavioural specialists, speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, physiotherapists and therapy assistants. The expanded RISE teams will provide support to all three levels of the support model, universal interventions targeting the wider general school population with a preventative focus. Will include whole school support, support for teachers, support for parents, as well as support, of course, for children. Targeted support will be provided to children who may have specific needs or are felt to be vulnerable or at risk of developing particular issues. Targeted support will also be provided for teachers and parents through consultation to co-develop an understanding of the child's presentation and appropriate support intervention needed. Specialist support is then provided for children whose needs cannot be met through universal or targeted provision. The CAMS emotional wellbeing teams in school will be a dedicated service to support schools across NI, providing direct support to children and young people, school staff and parents. They will align with the EA, the RISE teams and other professionals to ensure there is integrated working. Similar to the RISE teams, the new CAMS service will provide support in the form of resources and interventions to strengthen capacity within educational settings and directly support staff. Indeed, the referrals for the children and young people will come directly from educational settings themselves. The service will have an initial focus on the early support tier of the model, but will also facilitate access to more specialist support when needed. The next project is called REACH, which stands for Resilience in Education Assisting Change to Happen, and it will be delivered by the EA Youth Service, providing universal support and targeted one-to-one group work for pupils aged 6 to 19 years, and will have a focus on preventing and reducing mental health issues. This is building on the Youth Service successful FLAIR programme and will begin as a pilot available to schools through a referral process based on need. Targeted support will be for specific individuals and groups, with referrals coming directly from the educational settings, as well as capacity building for education staff to develop resilient schools, provided in conjunction with Ulster University. The focus will be on the wellbeing for all and early support elements of the support model. So these are just a few examples. There are other proposals within the framework aligned to a series of themes. I would also like to add that all elements of the finalised implementation plan will be subject to a rigorous evaluation as a pivotal part of the implementation to ensure there is a clear evidence base to support them going forward. In conclusion, we have made significant progress since our last update with yourselves, and we're very keen to hear your views on the framework itself, and we're happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Ricky. Okay, I'll go straight to bring members in for questions because I know we're tight for time and some members have other competing commitments this morning as well. So can I bring in Deputy Chairperson Karen Mullen, MLA?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and Ricky for that update. It is a good piece of work that has been carried out and added to the framework, so I just wanted to start off with that. Really good to hear the different elements there, the early support, early identification and that. Integrated working is central, you say, and I'm glad to hear you say that. Ricky, what I would say is that we're not seeing that currently. We've heard evidence in the recent weeks here at this committee in respect to special education needs, that particularly during COVID, which has been a very difficult period from parents and stakeholders, that they felt as though health completely shirked their responsibilities with education, and they felt abandoned. We had schools closed down and all other support services closed, but when we had restrictions lifted and schools reopened, we haven't seen those or heard from parents who have told us that those support services has not come back into play, and that is still the case for many families. So I wanted to ask, how can we ensure that health fulfills its obligations with regards to this framework?
Karen, thank you for the question, and through the Chair, I think it's a very important issue and it's fundamental to the successful delivery of this framework in terms of having that integrated work with health. So we have integration at a number of levels. We have senior health officials involved with the project board for this framework. We have a number of health-related projects being brought forward as part of this framework. I mentioned the expansion of the RISE teams and the CAMS service. We have the commitment from the Health Minister to provide funding on a recurrent basis from next year onwards. And we also have the work which the Department of Health are leading on in relation to the 10-year mental health strategy. And within that, there is a work stream in relation to promoting children and their families' positive mental health, and I'm involved in the working group for that. So all of the work that we're doing in education settings fits in and aligns with that broader mental health work that's being taken forward. And I know that the Department of Health and the Minister for Health have made a number of commitments publicly around all of that work. So I take assurance, and hopefully you can and members of the committee can, around all of that level of integration.
Thank you, Ricky. I suppose as I say, we are continuously hearing from families that they're not seeing it, they're not getting it. And I think that, and I know that's wider than the discussion we're having today, but I hope that this does frame a better way of working, and that families and children and young people will get that support, as you say, ongoing support and earlier. So thank you for that. Just another question. We're aware of obviously the current levels of workload faced by our principals and teachers, and the stress that is having, particularly with COVID, and COVID's not going to go away for any time soon. So can I ask what practical support will be provided to our principals to support the development of this framework in our schools?
Karen, again, thank you for that question, and that has been raised with us throughout our engagement with stakeholders on development of the framework. In fact, last week we had a 2-day workshop with a group of stakeholders, and we heard from Siobhan O'Neill, the mental health champion, and we also heard from Dr. Lindsay Bunting from Queen's University. And the message coming back was that we needed to have very clearly a holistic approach, which didn't just focus on children and young people, but focused on parents and also focused on the workforce. And the term I think that was used was, we need to support the supporters, so we can't ignore teachers. And within the framework, it is a key thing. We have identified the need to have a skilled and trained workforce, but we've also identified the need to support teachers in their well-being. So we would hope to be bringing forward a series of projects under those things, which would be tailored specifically for teachers and non-teaching staff.
Thank you, Ricky. And then just finally, I just wanted to finish off by commending the Education Authority Youth Service on the programmes and support that they're providing, but their ongoing development of new interventions and really relating to what's going on with young people. I have seen the excellent programmes that they're running out within my own area. I've seen the work that they've done over COVID, and I've read the plans that they have. So they're adapting as they go along. So I just wanted to note that, and that's me, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. William Humphrey, MLA.
Chair, and thanks, Ricky, for your presentation this morning. Can I ask you just to expand on the joint upness of it all? You mentioned the Department of Health coming in with some money, and that's very welcome, but can I just ask you to expand on the joint upness around the whole thing?
Sure, William. So we were clear from the start that this wasn't just for health and education. This actually involved a number of statutory agencies. So we have brought on board the Department of Justice, the Department for Communities, obviously the Education Authority, but also the wider health family in terms of the Health and Social Care Board, the Public Health Agency, and through them, the trusts themselves. So, as I said previously, for this to be successful, having that integrated approach is absolutely vital. Having that additional financial support from the Department of Health is also a welcome announcement. So it will be our job to ensure that that joined upness continues, not just in the development of the framework, but throughout delivery of all the projects. And I intend to make sure that that happens.
Yeah, unless I haven't picked up, there's no mention of the Department of Communities and Local Government there. And I do think that, for example, in this city, an organisation like Extern will be funded across various government departments. And I think some of that money comes from the Department of Communities. So in terms of expert organisations like Extern, what sort of role are they playing in the whole development of this wellbeing framework going forward?
So we have got the Department for Communities involved on the project board. They are engaged in this process, and through them we are engaging with the wider voluntary community sector. Indeed, there's an event that's being organised through NICFA in the coming weeks to engage on the framework itself. In terms of organisations like Extern, What we would like to see happen at the implementation level is that schools have the flexibility to work with local and regional organisations such as Extern and others once they have self-assessed the levels of emotional well-being in their schools, and they can then identify from a suite of projects what would be the best in terms of addressing any of those issues, so that we know from experience and we know from some of the good practice out there that does include working with some local organisations. So we would very much want to expand on that in the implementation of this, and we will be encouraging that as appropriate.
It's just that mental health and general well-being are huge issues. I mean, it's the other pandemic that's out there, quite frankly. In my constituency in North Belfast and Greater Shankill, huge issue right across the community. And there are many groups doing some great work like SAMI and TAMI that are largely sports based organisations. But I sit on the SHINE panel, which is chaired by my colleague Alderman Brian Kingston. And in that panel we have the church's principals of the 4 secondary schools, grammar schools, a representative of the primary school principals, youth organisations, uniformed organisations, football clubs, cricket club, and politicians, where everyone comes together, and it's about sharing of information and experiences and so on. There's no funding provided to that, and that's something perhaps they will look at going forward. But I just think the key to all of this is money certainly is a key to the solution, but it's not the only solution. Better joined upness, more communication, more sharing of information and experience, those sort of things are crucial in tackling this issue going forward. And of course, I also forgot to mention the police sit on this as well, and they play a key and important role, as do local council community safety wardens as well. And that's why I think local councils need to be brought into this more as well, because where they can bring resource, whether that is in people or buildings, then they need to be involved as well. We can only tackle these issues if there is a great joined upness with no gaps. But I would commend the work that you're doing. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, William. Robbie Butler, MLA.
Thank you, Chair. Guys, really pleased that you're here in the middle of November, because at the start of the year when we commenced and when we put this on the radar as one of our important pieces, you did make a commitment that this would come forward. So credit where credit's due, and in the little time that I've had to look through it, certainly enthusiastic about how it's been put together. So I would like to commend the team, and certainly the points that have been made so far by the members have all been worthy and worthwhile. I just want to ask some questions, probably with regard to what the makeup of the team is going to be, particularly from DE and EA. So in terms of the implementation plan, talks about the training capacity and building of support. So there's going to be, and I think it's DE and EA have responsibility for it. So there's an emotional health and wellbeing advisory team, and their core function will be specifically aimed at assisting schools to develop the whole school approach. Could you tell me what that team is going to look like, and will they have the sole function and not be sort of encumbered by any other aspects of work, but that we do have a commitment that we will have a core team dedicated to driving not just this framework but the delivery and outcomes over this next 5 to 10 years?
Yes, Robbie, thanks for that. I'll just talk briefly about that, and then I'll invite Shauna to talk in a wee bit more detail. You'll see in the plan a number of themes, and under those themes we've proposed a number of different approaches, and some of those approaches do include the formation of teams which would work directly with schools. So what I want to make sure is that those teams are very much aligned, that there's a protocol, and that suddenly on a Monday morning all these teams don't land at the principal's office saying they're all there to help. They need to work together. So the way the projects have been designed takes cognizance of that, and they are multidisciplinary in terms of their approach. Some of them will be for supporting the school staff. Some of them will be for supporting children directly, but I'll ask Shauna to talk a wee bit more about the EA projects.
Thank you. Yes, so the Education Authority intends to recruit a full complement of skilled and experienced staff to ensure that all aspects of the programme can be delivered in a timely, efficient and effective manner for schools, and that schools are engaged with along the way. That team, at this stage, we will be calling the Being Well, Doing Well team, and they will be there to promote the emotional health and wellbeing for all through training and capacity building for schools to develop a whole school approach. This team will work with the leadership across schools, Board of Governors, to support and develop embedding a culture of emotional health and wellbeing through the ethos in the school, through the school development plans, through policies and systems across the school, because I think it is right comments that have been made that this needs to be granular, it can't be an add-on. This team will also assist schools to complete the DE audit tool to gather views from their school community, assess what the needs are in their school and develop their implementation and action plans that complement their school development plans. The team will also work with schools to support on the curriculum development to ensure that there is a thread of emotional health and wellbeing through the curriculum, through particular curriculum areas, but also generally through the content across the curriculum, because I think from the prevalence study, one of the key points from the young people themselves is that they don't want mental health and wellbeing to be an add-on. They want all of their teachers to be confident in their discussions about health and wellbeing and their support for health and wellbeing. The team will also support staff. As we've mentioned, it is important that our staff's emotional health and wellbeing and that continuum of emotional health and wellbeing is recognised. So the team will support staff with resources, approaches and training on their own emotional health and wellbeing and in the delivery of that to young people. The team will also work with schools, school leaders, school staff and their pupils to review the pupil participation and the resource development, ensuring that pupil voice and pupil action is heard and seen. Our young people, we have to have confidence that they know what they need and they know what they want to do to support themselves and support each other. So through school councils and pupil voice, the team will support. The team will also support programmes in school that will enable pupil ambassadors across the school in emotional health and wellbeing. The team will also make sure that schools are supported and guided on how to engage their wider school community, their parents and carers, and local businesses and voluntary organisations in their culture of emotional health and wellbeing support and through all policies, practices and in terminology, making sure that that's there. The team will also then coordinate targeted support where the need is more intensive for young people or for schools through wider services across the Education Authority, including behaviour support services, education welfare services, through our counselling service for schools and the wider pupil support services. They will also make sure that there is that collaboration with health through the work from CAMS and the link in with our Youth Service Reach programme that Ricky has already described in an advice line that will be operational for schools and for all school staff, and that will be our Being Well, Doing Well team alongside our Reach team and CAMS colleagues who will be able to support schools for more targeted and intensive programme work.
Okay, thank you for that. It's a lot of teams, and hopefully there'll be. I didn't get them all. I should have had a pen to write them all down, but I'll be able to pick them up in Hansard. So hopefully that'll be resourced. So just two questions then, because I'll let the other members in. So then the important thing for this would be is the outcomes, guys. Okay, so could you indicate to me what outcomes might look like and what success looks like? And then the other question then is, and I can't find it at the moment, but I did read it last night. It talks about special education needs, and it says that this is a primary and a post-primary sort of fit, and that it could be, I think if I'm right, that it says it could be a template or used for special education needs. And we do know that through a report by MENCAP a number of years ago that the prevalence of mental health in children with special education needs is even more than it is in mainstream. So if you could tell me about those two things, please.
Yes, indeed, Robbie. We used a 2-day workshop with a series of stakeholders last week to focus on the question around how do we ensure that our children and young people have emotionally fulfilled lives. And I think that would be one of the key outcomes that we will measure success by. What I want to do is to work with the relevant experts in this area to come up with a proper method of evaluation. It is one of the themes within the plan you'll see towards the back. Measurement and evaluation of all the projects will be hugely important. Of course, those key outcomes relate to children and young people being safe, feeling safe in school, feeling happy, and feeling that they understand their emotions and know how to manage their emotions. So that focus around empowerment will be very important, so we need to come up with a way to try and measure that. And we have obviously a raft of research reports and evidence that tells us what the current issues are, so we know where to try and target these interventions and what outcomes we need to be achieving. In relation to SEN and special schools, I can give that assurance that this framework is for all schools, including special schools. So the programmes that we are designing here with stakeholders will go into those schools as well, and across all mainstream schools where, of course, the majority of children with SEN are.
Can I just ask and finish that one out? That's really good to know, Ricky. Just have the SEN sector been consulted with regard to the framework? To just establish the fit.
Okay, so we the consultation on this has been long and wide-reaching, and various representative bodies have been involved at different stages. So, of course, the voice of children with SEN has been reflected through some of the surveys that have been done on our behalf by the National Children's Bureau. We've got reports from the Children and Young People Strategic Partnership, which includes hearing the voices of children with SEN. We've engaged with the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People, the National Children's Bureau, the Children's Law Centre, and a few other advocacy organisations. So I would be confident that we have all the evidence that we need. We know what the issues are. We know that those issues can impact more on certain cohorts of children. We know what the risk factors are. It's really now down to let's get this finalised and let's get these projects delivered for children and young people.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. You, Chair.
Thanks, Robbie. Daniel McCrossan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Just a couple of remarks. In the framework document, it states, while some have argued that early intervention may have its strongest impact when offered during the first few years of life, the best evidence shows that effective interventions can improve children's life's chances at any point during childhood and adolescence. Now, whilst some of that we can absolutely agree with, it does create an element of uncertainty. I think we need to be very, very firm from the outset that the earlier or the sooner the intervention, the better the outcome for the child. And I want to see that prioritised by the department, and I want to see, if possible, the introductory paragraphs rephrased to provide complete and utter clarity as to what the intention is, because I'm sure that's what the intention is, but it doesn't come across from how it's written. So I would like that looked at. Just in terms of the iMatter self-assessment audit tool, it appears to imply that schools should already be undertaking a whole school approach to emotional health and well-being. Does the Department of Education, EA, believe that £5 to £10 million will be sufficient to establish a consistent baseline of emotional health and well-being, as well as the other actions identified in the draft implementation plan? That's one point. And secondly, will all schools be inspected from 2021 in respect of their compliance with the iMatter self-assessment audit tool, and will this affect the overall assessment of schools by the ETI?
Daniel, thank you for your questions. I note your first comment around early intervention, and we will look at that. You're absolutely right. It is the intention that early intervention is one of the priorities. We have all the evidence from all the reports to say that, and we are clear on that, but we will make it clearer. Is 5 million enough? I don't think that we can answer that right now. We have a commitment for 6.5 million from next year onwards. We have identified the issues, the themes, and some projects which will go some way to addressing the level of need. I think what we will have to do is make sure we have the appropriate monitoring and evaluation processes in place to understand whether those projects are actually having an impact and whether additional funding and additional projects will be required. And if that is the case, then we will pursue that. In relation to inspection, one of the messages that has come back to us from our recent engagement events has been that we need to have health and well-being on an equal footing with attainment and achievement. And some stakeholders would like to see that being inspected by the ETI. We know, and I've spoken to principals about this, there are good examples out there where well-being is really embedded within the ethos of the school. And of course, as part of this framework, we want to capture that and roll that out more widely. It would be very helpful if, in some way, through the inspection process, we could validate that good work and identify where it's working well and where it needs to improve. So I think that's a conversation that I need to have with the ETI, which I will intend to take forward, and something that I would need to come back to you on.
Thanks very much. I don't want you to answer this particular point, but just in relation to the sums or the funding that I've mentioned, I would like to think the department has costed this up and has put a value on the necessary investment that is required to see that it is successful. Otherwise, it would be a stick and plaster exercise. Resources wouldn't properly be used to tackle the issue and would prove much more costly in the long run. So I would like to think when we're planning these things, we cost them effectively and we try and get the money out. And where you've said there's 6.5 million there and it's welcome, but I'm just wondering, is it enough? Just in relation to the draft framework indicates that the EA, working with voluntary organisations such as CAMS, school nursing and RISE teams, I know John you mentioned this, develop a range of enhanced services and an integrated system of service provision. Can the department identify what resources or changes to existing practices and timescales will be needed in order to deliver this very significant change to joined up working between health and education? That's a critical and very important point. And secondly, will the new model require primary schools to share pupil profile information with post-primary schools for transferring pupils? And does current GDPR rules permit this? Because that has complicated a lot of things in schools and generally in life. I know it's necessary to protect people, but it is complicated. And the final point in relation to this, these are all linked. Are voluntary support and RISE teams support available on a consistent basis through the country? And if not, how is the new model in this framework to be delivered consistently? So 3 interlinked points there, John. One around the joint of working between health and education. Secondly, in relation to the GDPR and the complications it presents. And finally, in relation to the consistent approach or the basis throughout the country in terms of RISE team support.
Daniel, sorry. You broke up a bit on us. Can you just repeat the first question for me?
The first one was, can the department identify what resources or changes to existing practices and timescales will be needed in order to deliver this very significant change to joined up working between health and education?
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Okay, I'll start and then I'll invite Shauna to talk a wee bit more about the EA aspects of the projects. So, look, as I've said previously, I think the joined-up aspect of this is critical to successful delivery. There are a range of mental health services out there which schools already have access to, but we know there are problems with those access levels, and we know there's an inconsistent approach. And we know from the NCB, the Children's Commissioner report still waiting, that it's unacceptable and there are unacceptable delays. So all of that is considered when we're designing these projects, and one of the critical things in terms of design is to make sure that the referral pathways and then the timeframes associated with receiving support are acceptable and will be done in a way that will meet need. So we are still at the design stage of some of these projects, but I can give you that assurance that they are factors that we will build in. In terms of the GDPR aspect and pupil profiles, what I would like to see happen through the teams which Shauna talked about is that schools are able to carry out an audit and an assessment of the level of need within their school populations. Of course, they need to be cognizant of GDPR requirements, and some of this information would be in a sensitive category area, so there are additional considerations there in terms of information sharing. However, I do believe, and this does happen at the minute, schools can identify and gain a profile of need in terms of emotional need and mental health needs within their school that will allow for these projects to go in and deliver appropriate and tailored support. So that would be the intention. In terms of the RISE teams, that is actually a health-based service which is delivered in education settings. I can't speak in an informed way about the level of inconsistency, so unless, Shauna, you have anything you can add to that?
Just before you do, John, it links to the original point of what has been done to resource to resource these changes in order to ensure that there's a more effective working relationship between health and education. So that's an interlinked point, and you've practically answered it by saying, I know you can't speak in relation to them, but there are inconsistencies, and it's important that through development of the relationships of health and education that those issues are fixed, because they are interlinked and they need to be solved or resolved together.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Can I bring in Justin McNulty, MLA? Sorry, Justin, before I bring in as well, could I just remind members that we're now on quorum. If all members could stay until the conclusion of the meeting, that would be very helpful. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Ricky. Thanks, Angela. Thank you, Shauna. Ricky, you touched on it as part of your presentation. What's been the impact of COVID on your ability to deliver this framework and on your thinking around the framework and on children throughout this pandemic?
Thanks, Justin. Very important question. I did say that COVID has exacerbated mental health issues within children and young people. We have got the evidence from a number of sources to support that. We also have evidence from those same sources that tells us how we need to target support because of COVID. In terms of how it's impacted on us, it has been more difficult to engage with stakeholders in terms of bringing forward the framework, but we have continued as best we can. We have organised events using Zoom and so on, and we have further stakeholder events organised in the coming weeks. So we will continue, and we aim to have this framework finalised in the not too distant future. But I think it's more important to talk about the impact on children, families and young people. So we know that issues around financial stress, increased debt, loss of jobs have added to the anxiety within families and therefore had an impact directly on children and young people. We know that anxiety levels have increased because of uncertainty perhaps around how education will be delivered in the future. Some of those children may already have been dealing with significant emotional problems. I mean, we have evidence from the recent wellbeing survey that says 1 in 8 children are suffering from an emotional disorder. That was pre-COVID. So we don't know what the numbers are now, but they can only probably be worse. We know that 1 in 10 children were engaging in self-harm behaviour. So we know that the figures are not good, and we know that COVID has just made that worse, Justin. So for me, this is about finalising the framework, working with schools and stakeholders and the wider community, and getting these projects off the ground as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Ricky. Are you guys scared? I'm scared. I'm watching programs about domestic abuse. I'm experiencing just close to my own house here, a woman whose life is not out of danger after a domestic attack, stabbing incident at the weekend. Kids, I think, were in the home when it happened. 4 young children. The kids who are at risk in their homes, who throughout this pandemic have had no release. School is their safe place, and school was their safe place. Haven't had access to their safe place throughout this pandemic. Are you not scared for the safety of children, for the well-being of children, for the mental and emotional well-being of our young people?
Justin, of course, these are worrying times, and all of us are very concerned about the impact on children and families. I mean, again, the wellbeing study that was done by Queen's and Ulster University, which was only recently published, said that of the children that they surveyed, 37% had been exposed to some form of trauma, and the biggest aspect of that was witnessing violence, followed by being involved in a serious accident, followed by the loss of a loved one. So these are very serious issues, and that is why we have a very clear mandate. We have the evidence, and we know what we have to do. That's why it makes this all the more important. So we are very aware of that.
And here, what numbers, what data do you have in terms of the numbers of children who are really struggling throughout this pandemic? I've raised this issue numerous times at this committee in terms of those kids who are at risk. What sort of data do you have in relation to those kids?
I suppose it's a complicated answer, Justin, and I'm aware that officials are coming back to this committee next week, specifically on the issue of vulnerable children, and it's probably more appropriate at that stage when I have others with me who will have that information that we try to answer that question. Vulnerable children brings in a lot of different categories, and some of those or all of those may be at risk, so I don't have the data with me today.
Okay, listen, I wish you well, Ricky, and Sean. I really, really work to do, and I wish you well in your work going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Maurice Bradley, MLA.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation there. And it's a lot of good answers to a lot of good questions there. So look, I know times of the essence. 2 points to stick out to me would be the pilot scheme that you had undertaken in Lunchtime. Have you been able to roll out 2 nurses in each health trust so far? And if not, when would you expect that to have been completed?
Maurice, thanks for that. Yes, that was one of the projects that the health authorities brought forward because of the success of the pilot. So the answer is we're working on the business case for that as we speak. So it hasn't been rolled out as yet. Is that correct?
It's going out in September.
Okay, so we're hoping that the business case will be approved and then we will commence rollout of that programme. It'll probably be next year now, Maurice.
That's okay, thanks very much. One more question, Chair, with your permission.
Go ahead, Maurice.
Have you had any discussions with the universities yet to introduce teacher training to equip future graduates to work seamlessly within what has been proposed in the new framework?
I think there's a theme within the framework which does talk about teacher education. Angela, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yes, we have had some discussions, principally with Queen's and Stranmillis, about that, and we want to expand that. But absolutely, there's a lot of good work in the universities where they are bringing these subjects through to teach our future teachers about them and equip them, so we want to further that engagement with them.
Yeah. Okay, Chair, thanks for it.
Thanks, Maurice.
You went to the Ulster University there. Discussions with them?
Sorry, Maurice, you broke up there. Did you guys hear Maurice there?
We did, yes.
Okay. Okay, Maurice?
Okay, thanks very much, Chair.
Thanks, members and witnesses. Ricky, realise we're short of time. You've been with us for quite some time, so I just have a few hopefully fairly straightforward questions with regards to specific proposals. So I'll try and keep it concise, and if you keep the answers concise as well. The elephant in the room, important research conducted in 2018 with 14 to 17-year-olds and over 1,000 young people brought forward a number of specific proposals. Can I just go through them to ask if they'll be incorporated by the emotional health and wellbeing framework, because they come from young people themselves, and it strikes me as being important as we consider what young people are asking for and including in the framework. So the first thing was a youth-led mental health campaign to challenge the stigma attached to mental health and to promote safe, open communication on mental health. Will there be a youth-led mental health campaign as part of this?
We haven't got anything designed at this minute in time, Chair, but I'm aware of all the recommendations in the Elephant in the Room report. I think that's something that we will definitely need to look at, and we can work with the Northern Ireland Youth Forum on that, and it would probably be through the EA's youth service that something like that would be brought forward. So we certainly will look at that, Chair. Yeah. Okay. Another recommendation was for a youth mental health website to centralise key information and support. A particular suggestion of an online chat support platform, given that's where frequently young people are engaged. Has that been considered? So yes, we have commissioned SIA to develop a wellbeing hub, and that work is ongoing. So we'd be very happy to come back and talk to the committee about elements of that hub once it gets off the ground. Okay. I don't think that sounds positive, Ricky. I don't think it's the same thing. A youth mental health website designed by young people to centralise information, which might include signposting to a SIA hub, for example, but with that creative online chat function as well. I think a lot of this work has thrown up stigma and challenges for children and young people to know who to approach, and the young people felt like that online chat function is something that would be positive. So I'll leave that with you. A third recommendation was a mental health dictionary, and even in your own framework here I see a lot of reference to the importance of terminology. Have you considered the recommendation for the production of a mental health dictionary for children and young people? I think again, and I suppose like the second recommendation, this is something that we will want the EA Youth Service to pick up as part of the development of the projects that they will be bringing forward. The Youth Service have a further consultation planned with young people. I expect those messages to come back again. So yes, we would be happy to look at the development of some kind of dictionary which is very clear on these terms. I would stress though that even in our engagement with the experts, there isn't always uniformity in the terminology. So it may be difficult to get absolute agreement across all the various terms, but we will certainly have a look at that. Okay, and another recommendation then was for all of that type of information to be used as part of mental health education as a formal, explicitly referenced part of the statutory curriculum. So will as part of this framework mental health be on a par with physical health in the statutory curriculum? Chair, I think when it comes to the curriculum, the rules around the minimum level of curriculum are set, and we know already that the statutory curriculum covers mental health awareness and the management of feelings and emotions through the personal development and mutual understanding at primary level and the living for life and work at post-primary level. So that minimum level is there, and schools have the flexibility to deliver that. If something more is needed, that's a conversation that will need to happen, and if that becomes an even clearer message, then of course, I will be picking that up with colleagues in the department. Okay, I think the final recommendation was training for teaching staff and youth workers, which you've referenced already. I mean, those. Do you agree that those are quite substantive, constructive recommendations? And what I understand is the Elephant in the Room committee
met with the executive subgroup on mental health, further to my request that the Health Minister engage with them. What ongoing engagement are you having with the Elephant in the Room committee in relation to the implementation of emotional health and wellbeing?
So we have had engagement with the forum on this. Angela, can you expand a bit?
In terms of trying to develop the framework and what direction we might take, we did meet with the Belfast Youth Forum, and it's something that we would like to consider going forward on a more regular basis. We just haven't formalised that as yet.
Okay, because I have to say, out of those 5 solid recommendations, it doesn't sound like any of them are in the framework at this moment in time.
I think the difficulty is, as Ricky had said earlier, the focus initially in this implementation plan was to get the structural changes we needed so that we could get the collaboration and the integrated working. And we do have the future pressures from next year onwards to look at some of these things as well. So this is not a finalised and finished article as yet. We will expand on that implementation plan.
And Chair, just to add to that, one of the clear messages we've got from our recent engagement is that peer support and the support that children and young people can offer to other children and young people is critical in the delivery of the framework. So the framework is very much about the themes. The detail around the projects is still under development. So, you know, all of those recommendations do chime with what we are being told. So, you know, we are very happy to look at those in more detail.
Okay. The framework is final point for me within my time. The framework itself references, and I quote, the importance of promoting emotional health and wellbeing at the earliest stage. And can you advise then what the current proposals are for counselling in primary schools?
So we know from our experience of the independent counselling service for schools, for post-primary schools, that there is some evidence to suggest that counselling can have some impact, but we also know that in terms of primary school counselling, the research and the evidence around that is actually quite light. So we are keen to carry out a pilot of primary school counselling, and that will be one of the projects that is brought forward. And we will use the evidence from that to determine whether it needs to be rolled out more widely.
Okay, and when and where will that pilot for counselling in primary schools happen?
We're working on the detail of the business case now, so I can't elaborate any further on that, unfortunately. But you know, we would be happy to come back at a later stage and talk to the committee about that once we get it up and running.
Okay, because the framework said that it was to happen in October 2020.
No, I understand that, and I stress the draft status of the framework, and I suppose it's back to the question about the impact of COVID. Unfortunately, some of those intended dates of delivery of the projects have slipped, but I can assure you that we are working on the business cases for those projects as quickly as possible. So it would be our intention to bring that forward as quickly as we can.
Okay, final question. I am over my time, apologies. One of the key issues that was often raised with me by children and young people was the need for smooth referral or escalation of mental ill health concerns from school to CAMHS. Has the framework proposing anything that will enhance the ability of emotional and mental wellbeing issues being identified at school having smooth referral access to CAMHS?
I would share the concern. That is a message that we have got back as well. So yes, one of the projects, which is essentially a CAMHS team that would be through the Health and Social Care Board that would work with schools. The idea is that would allow for smoother referral and access to those specialist services if they are required. So yes, that is the intention.
Okay, that's positive. Okay, Ricky, that's all questions from ourselves today. Thank you for the update. As I said in my opening remarks, This is obviously a priority issue for the committee, as it is for you. We'd be glad to keep an ongoing contact with you as the framework progresses. Okay, they froze.
Okay,
all right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ricky. Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ricky, Angela and Shauna, for your presentation today. Can I ask Assembly Broadcasting to remove the witnesses and add all members back into the spotlight until the end of the meeting, and ask our clerk to summarise actions or requests from the briefing?
So, Chairperson, if I've understood members correctly, I think they want to write to the departments, I think generally welcome the progress that's been made on the framework, encourage encourage the importance of further joined upness between education, health and others, including communities and local councils, stress the vital importance of early intervention. This should be prominent in the framework. Suggest also that the department make the most of interactions with expert organisations in the community and voluntary sector, and indeed with local councils, in terms of ensuring consistent delivery. And then perhaps ask the department if, or rather, no, rephrase that. Perhaps I think that the committee is asking the department to take forward some of the elephant in the room recommendations, including the development of the mental health dictionary, the inclusion of an explicit reference to mental health in the curriculum, and also a mental health hub, which would include an online chat function. In addition to that, I think the committee might want to ask for details of the SIA hub, and also about the piloting of the counselling service in primary schools. So hopefully that's captured all, members. Chair.
Clerk, could I just add youth-led mental health campaign to that elephant in the room set of recommendations, and that's the inclusion. Members wish to add anything to that? Yeah, Daniel?
Chair, I know I touched on this in some of the remarks I've made, but I do think it needs to be absolutely crystal clear that the department reaffirm their commitment and their intention by clarifying, rephrasing the introductory comments in their open remarks. They're just too ambiguous for me. It needs to be clear that early intervention is the sooner the better, that they intervene the better. But at the minute, the way it's phrased, it just allows opinions to be formed as to when intervention is best. I think everybody has agreed that it's early intervention is best, but it's a petty wee point, but
clarity.
It's very important that we fix it.
Okay. Members, any other comments?
Well, yeah, just another final point.
Go ahead.
The money element of it. I know Ricky Irwin has said that he doesn't know if it's enough, or not to misquote him in any way, but 6.5 million, I didn't even think 10 million was enough, given the scale of work that is required. I'm just wondering, did they actually cost this up, and what figure was placed on it, and how far short are we? Because I don't believe that there is sufficient money there. Otherwise, that's just going to be a stick and plaster approach.
Okay. Costing and budgets.
And deficit, yeah. Okay.
Any other comments, members? No. Okay. Members agreed with that correspondence to the department? Agreed?
Yes, members, or no if you disagree.
Can I get an? I sound like a preacher. Can I get an agreed?
Yes.
Agreed. Thank you. Can I get an amen? Okay. Agenda item 8, members' correspondence. Can I ask the clerk to speak to the correspondence items?
Thanks, Chairperson. We have 12 items of correspondence. Summary note is at page 279. I'm just asking if members are content to dispose of the correspondence as per the summary note, with just the following exceptions. So, at page 282, this is a response from the Minister to committee concerns in respect of the lack of clarity in answers provided to the committee in June by SIA regarding grade awarding models and options. Chair, can I ask if the committee are content to note, or if they have any other comment?
Yep.
Agreed.
Okay, and then at page 285, response from the department regarding concerns raised by parents of children with dyslexia. DE indicate that they're seeking advice from the Education Authority on how support services are provided in this regard, and they're going to return to the committee with a full response following this. So are members just content to note this for now and to return to the matter when a fuller response is received?
Yeah, yes, Clerk, and it's my understanding that some of the proposed changes to examinations in 2021 have been met with considerable concern with pupils with dyslexia as well. So yeah, we'll await the response to that. Okay. Agreed.
Okay. So at page 287 is a response from DE about training teachers for the deaf. This came about following a briefing from National Deaf Children's Society before the summer, and it was in response to concerns regarding the anticipated retirement of teachers. DE has indicated it's willing to work with stakeholders to explore options, but it doesn't usually fund initial teacher education. So committee consent to forward that to the National Deaf Children's Society, who initiated it.
Yeah, Clark, it doesn't fund initial teacher education, but one would have hoped that it would have some degree of interest in initial teacher education, and it does indeed, of course, set the numbers for initial teacher education. Therefore, it should be concerned about whether or not initial teacher education is meeting the needs of deaf children. Hopefully the more positive aspect of that correspondence, which gives a commitment to engage with stakeholders on this matter, can be carried out, and if we can ask the stakeholder organisations to keep us posted as to the extent of the engagement they receive from the department, that would be great.
Okay, very good.
Members agreed? Yeah, agreed. Okay.
Thank you. And then just moving on to item 8.7, which is at page 292. This is from the QUB Centre for Children's Rights, providing a copy of a research report from the recent project exploring life in lockdown for autistic young people in Northern Ireland. Now, we've had a few like this, so I'm suggesting, Chairperson, that maybe the committee invites this group to our informal Zoom event, which is going to deal with this on the 3rd of December.
Agreed. Yep.
Additionally, then, we have Action for Children on the very similar subject, the impact of lockdown on vulnerable children. So same suggested action, that we invite them to our informal event where they'll be able to say a bit more about their findings.
Agreed.
And then, sorry, thank you, well done members, thanks members. At page 322, correspondence from the Minister, a number of detailed changes to GCSE curricula and assessment for 2021. They're in respect of particular GCSEs, food and nutrition, government and politics, health and social care, religious studies and statistics. Just to note, members, some of the GCSE end-of-year exams will be supplemented with controlled assessment tasks set by SIA, and which will be internally marked by teachers according to a mark frame provided by SIA, which will then be externally moderated. Again, SIA will look after that. And SIA is also to provide specimen assessment tasks and training for teachers to assist in the marking and internal moderation processes. So the reason I mention that is if you see what's happened in Wales, slightly different. There, it's not going to be marked by teachers, it'll be marked externally. But in terms of, let's say, options for how you might deal with end-of-year examinations if the public health situation deteriorates, that might be where they may be going. So again, just remember some information. As the Chair has just indicated, a number of pupils... Sorry.
Someone want to come in there? Yeah, Justin, go ahead.
Just in terms of the curriculum on GCSE subjects, and I'm not sure if it applies for A-level as well, the curriculum is moving, the goalposts are moving. So teachers are teaching elements of their subjects only to be told, oh, we're not going to be actually examining that in the coming summer. So I think we need some clarity around those issues, and I think that the Minister needs to come to committee ASAP to give us the clarity and give teachers the clarity that so they're no longer teaching elements and subjects whereby that's not actually going to be examined. And that's what's going on at the moment, so teachers are really concerned about that.
I think, Chairperson,
Clark?
Sorry, beg your pardon, Chairperson. The committee's already agreed under Chair's biz to write to the Department and SIA, again seeking clarity on contingency arrangements for GCSEs, AS and A-level. So I think we're ready. The committee has been on this. And
it's part of the contingency issue is going on at present. That's what the example will be now. So it's about more than contingency, it's about curriculum.
So, okay, sorry, Chair, what's the action that the members would like us to do?
The Minister needs to come and tell us what is happening.
Okay.
Schools.
Minister is scheduled for...
Well, we've asked for the 9th of December.
Okay.
So I could indicate to the department that obviously members would like clarity on the delivery of the curriculum for the remainder of this academic year.
Okay. Yeah, and have we had a response from the Minister with regards to attendance on that date? Okay, maybe we'll consider that in the forward work programme. Justin, I wholly agree with what you're saying. Are you content that we write in the first instance, and that in the forward work programme here we consider how soon we could invite the Minister to come to speak to those matters as well?
Well, I'm just concerned there's a lot of teachers with their heads in their hands wondering what the hell they're doing, you know, so I think this is a very, very urgent issue to be addressed.
Yep, I agree. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So the other item is at page 327. This is an invitation from Deloitte MCS Limited inviting the Chair and Deputy Chair to participate in the Deloitte independent review of the awarding arrangements used by SEA in 2020. The invitation includes the terms of reference for the review. These include the development and communication of the grade awarding models, and the review is also to reflect on a possible model of moderation of teacher assessments across centres as a contingency should examinations not be possible. So that's all of the things that are in that. Members may wish to note that Deloitte undertook reviews of NICE, Northern Ireland Council for Integrated Education, and SENA-G, in the previous mandate. Committee members were invited to participate, but at that time, so predecessor committee members were invited to participate, but at that time declined, as they were concerned that if they contributed to the findings, there could be a conflict of interest when they came to scrutinise. So, Chairperson, its question is, what does the committee want to do? Are they content to permit the Chair and Deputy Chair to participate in that review? And is it the view of the Chair and the Deputy Chair that they want to do that, Chairperson?
Yeah, thanks, Clark. Haven't had time to consider this in detail, but my initial reaction would be for us to provide the independent review with the responses that the committee had issued to SEA, both in relation to last year's arrangements and this year's arrangements. Would members be content with that approach? Obviously, political parties are at liberty to contribute to the independent review should they wish as well, but it will be for the committee to consider the recommendations that come from the independent review and to take a view on those at a later date. Would members be content with that approach?
Yeah,
Karen, yep.
If I could come on, I suppose I know the clerk has pointed to a previous review, and I could see maybe why people didn't at that stage. I think there is a difference between being interviewed for a report and being tied under the findings, particularly on this occasion. Our concerns as a committee wasn't listened to throughout this process in relation to the examinations there earlier in the summer, and nothing moved until the English Minister moved. And just as Justin has highlighted there, I feel we're in the same position again. So I think we should submit all of those concerns and what we were involved in before. So I would agree with that approach.
Yeah, I agree, Karen. I think if we make sure that the concerns that the committee expressed and quite clearly in writing as part of the last process, and those concerns that have been expressed in relation to the current approach to curriculum examinations for this year, which are available already, are clearly submitted to the review, and then we can consider the recommendations that come forward thereafter. Members content with that approach? Yep. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
Okay, Clark, is that correspondence?
That's all correspondence. We've already done forward work programmes.
Oh, have we? Okay. Can we just revisit that very briefly, Clark, just in terms of when the Minister is scheduled to attend, or when we've asked them to attend? What page is forward work programme on
that
there?
Would be, if you look at page 19 to 20, so at page
19, yep.
Okay. So at page 20, we've asked on the 9th of December for the Minister to come. Hopefully he could, if he did agree to come, he might be able to talk about budget at that point, as well as obviously the restart and examination on curriculum delivery issues, which members have talked about, if indeed that works for him.
Okay. I mean, is it worth us asking what the earliest date is that the minister could attend the committee?
I'll speak to the
yeah
and see what we can do with that.
Okay. Justin, content with that request? Yeah. Okay. Okay, members. Agenda item 9. Any other business? Nope. Okay then. Agenda item 10. The date and time of our next meeting is Wednesday, the 18th of November, in room 30, Parliament Buildings, and via Starleaf at 9:30 a.m. Is that right, Clark?
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, the committee meeting does now adjourn. Thank you.
Thanks, members. Well done. Thank you.
Well done, Chris.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber.